Call to order the regular meeting of the City Council for Monday, February 17th, 2020. Roll call, Carla.
Beaufore.
Here.
Birgen.
Here I am.
Drenkow.
Here.
Glaser.
Here.
Kangas.
Here.
Rathe.
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
Thank you for all being here this evening. Brought on the agenda. Item C, approval of the agenda. Seek a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Item D, approval of the minutes. Approval of the February 8th, 2020 budget work session study minutes.
I'll move approval of the February 8, 2020 budget work study session minutes.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion or changes as such? Right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Item E is public hearing. This is the date and time and place for a public hearing to set the maximum property tax dollars for the city's proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. The mayor and the city council will entertain any comments. After all comments, the hearing will be declared closed and the following action will be considered. So open the public hearing. I know I mentioned in a previous council meeting that we would leave this open for a little while. I know we've got a very pressing agenda this evening, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the public hearing open. If anybody has anything, bring it forward. I'm not going to do the 15 minutes on this go-around. As we get into finalizing in second, third readings, we will look at doing that. So I'm not going to close the public hearing while Mr. Bronner speaks unless somebody has something immediately to bring forward. So again, the public hearing will be open for a while here, and then we will re-entertain that and then close that. So go ahead, Mr. Bronner.
Thank you, Mayor. I may let Finance Director, or former Finance Director, if I mind, speak as well, but this is more of a ministerial meeting, unfortunately. This is the second hearing the state is making us do because they weren't sure we were serious the first time we had the meeting last year about it. This does not include the debt levy. It does not include other levies. I'm not sure the purpose personally of it, but that's what the legislature figured out. So we're having this to set a maximum that you can certainly go above and beyond. So I'm not sure the point, honestly. So that's the gist of this. This is not even the important one, in my opinion. The important one is the final one on the 16th, when you truly will decide a city budget. This is the secondary we had to do. Jennifer, I don't know if you have any comments accordingly. You know, we were at the budget meeting with Ted Nielsen. This is in lieu of the state saying we need to have 2 hearings now instead of 1 to make doubly sure we really want to do this. So
you pretty much covered it. Instead of you looking at the levy, you're looking at the property taxes that we have as of this fiscal year, and they're using that property tax amount to determine what your change is going to be. So they think it's a more transparent way of doing it, evidently. But my theory is, like James said, this isn't, you see the 11.4 levy rate, that doesn't include your debt levy rate.
So I'm not sure how you get a total picture of the budget without the debt or a couple of the small levies we don't really utilize at this time, but that's what in effect this is a partial look at your budget. We're showing an increase of 0.87, so we're not even close to the 2% threshold they were talking about, but that's where we are. I mean, we're happy to field questions, but I don't know that I understand any better than anybody else to why we're doing it, other than we were told we had to.
There was a different intention of this, wasn't there? And that kind of got lost, or am I
don't know what the intention was. The initial discussion on this was to eliminate our ability to tax and revenue control ourselves. And it was to eliminate our general fund, our 810 levy, and then, as they've done in the school system, just give you 1 or 2%. We think that'll be enough for you to go forward, and that's all you would receive. They ran out of time last year, so it did not get done, but counties and cities are both going to be under that same stipulation. So it's just another attempt at the state to try and control what local government does. It violates everything about home rule that you've ever heard of. I'm not sure why they're doing this, but this is what came out of that entire meeting last year. Was all the talk and all the discussion was this, a secondary hearing that we have to pay another chunk for publishing, staff time, preparing, everything else is done. Explain to me how that was better and more transparent. And only part of it's actually included in this. not even for a lot of cities, the largest part, which is your debt levy. So again, I hate to be so cynical about it, but I fail to see the point in what we're doing tonight, other than we have to do it. So I don't know the initial reasoning, Councilman, as to why they did it. This is just the end result of what came out of all the discussions, so.
The short answer is it's government.
Well, it's state government.
Elections.
I'm going to wait just a couple minutes here.
Absolutely, Mayor.
Because,
Certainly your prerogative, absolutely.
if anybody has anything else, again, I don't want to sit here for another 13 minutes on this, but yes, Carla.
I just wanted to let you know there are no oral or written comments that were turned into me.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I had nothing emailed to me individually either, so. The whole purposes of this is late arrivals, not knowing exactly when it's on the agenda. They just want the ability for people to show up and ask questions and be informed. So it's not to waste anybody's time. It's was a recommendation from the Department of Management at the budget class that I went to with James and Carla. I was in the other session, so.
Probably on the final, it's really important to.
Right, yeah.
Since this is brand new, though, they'd like to have it entertained, have people ask questions, but again, I look at it as a partial, and not even the more important partial for a lot of cities, which is your project work, your debt, the things that really move the needle. This is your general fund, it's your insurance, it's your benefits. I mean, it's truly mostly personnel.
All right, I've got 5 minutes on the book at this point in time, so I'm going to close the public hearing.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Seek a motion for the approval of Resolution 20-12, approving the maximum property tax dollars from certain levies for the city's proposed fiscal year 2020-21 budget.
I'll move to approve Resolution 20-12, approving the maximum property tax dollars from certain levies for the city's proposed fiscal year 2020 to 2021 budget.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote. Carla?
Beaufore.
Yes.
Birgen.
Yes.
Drenkow.
Yes.
Glaser.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Rathe.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
On a vote of 7-0, motion carries unanimously. Item 2, this is a date, time, and place for a public hearing for the Airport Obstruction Removal Project 2020. Plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimate cost. The mayor and city council will entertain any comments. After all comments, the hearing will be declared closed and the following action will be considered. Now, open the public hearing at this time. This one's a little different. So seeing nobody racing to the podium, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Did you have any written?
No, sir.
No, I would still entertain those, but, all right. Seek a motion to approve Resolution 20-13, approving plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimate cost of $145,795 for the Airport Obstruction Removal Project 2020.
I'll move approval of Resolution 20-13 as read by the mayor.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion from the council? I did hear that, talked to Mike a little bit today, that bids were competitive in nature, which is a good thing to see. So, hearing no further discussion, roll call vote. Carla?
Birgen.
Yes.
Drenkow.
Yes.
Glaser.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Rathe.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Beaufore.
Yes.
On a roll call vote of 7-0, 2013 is approved. Item 2A, Resolution 20-14, awarding contract for the Airport Obstruction Removal Project 2020. Need a motion for that?
I'll move Resolution 20-14, awarding contract for the Airport Obstruction Removal Project 2020 to Schneider Excavating and Grading Company of Walford, Iowa for the bid amount of $106,415.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion?
Just a general question. We're talking about bids. Are we seeing any general easing on construction prices at all? Okay. As I saw steel, looks like it was kind of peaking, so I'm hoping. I'll ask next year. We'll see how we are.
You can ask that in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. Anything further? Hearing none, roll call vote. Carla?
Drenkow.
Yes.
Glaser.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Rathe.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Beaufore.
Yes.
Birgen.
Yes.
On a vote of 7-0, unanimous passing of 20-14. Item F, public comments on items not on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes unless additional time is granted by the presiding officer. All remarks shall be addressed to the council as a whole and not to any individual member. I'll just give you a friendly reminder that streetscape is on the agenda this evening, so please hold those items for that time.
Pete Lampy, Waverly, Iowa. I just want to make a public comment of thank you to the council, the mayor. I sat through their budget sessions. First one was pretty basic, like it always is. Second one, in the afternoon in particular, they started getting into some really nasty things that they're going to have to make some serious decisions about. I appreciate your hard work and your thought and your input into it.
Thank you for your diligence in that as well, Pete. Anything further? Okay, we'll move on to item G, the consent calendar. Following items will be acted upon by voice vote on a single motion without separate discussion unless someone from the council or public requests that a specific item be considered separately. Item 1, approve the purchase of 12 point-blank HiLite body armor vests for the police department from Galls of Lexington, Kentucky for the total purchase price of $7,799.40. Item 2, approve the purchase of a brand FX fiberglass service body for the sewer and lime maintenance division from Stellar Truck and Trailer of Mason City, Iowa for the total purchase price of $15,998.05. Item 3, pay request from WHKS and Company for the Business 218 North Resurfacing 2020 for the amount of $1,244.10. Item 4, pay request from Midland GIS Solutions LLC for the GIS data collection 2019 for the amount of $5,000. Item 5, pay request from Impact 7G for the Airport Obstruction Removal Project 2020 for the amount of $1,690. Item 6, pay request from Stagey Construction Incorporated for the Waverly Senior Housing Building Project for the amount of $131,255.75 to be paid by Waverly Senior Housing. Number 7, pay request from Align Architecture and Planning for the Waverly Senior Housing Building Project for the amount of $3,000.85 to be paid by Waverly Senior Housing. Item 8, Class C liquor license for Quickstar 707, which is Quickstar West.
I will move the consent calendar as read by the mayor.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carries. Item H, under regular business, number 1, Resolution 20-08, a resolution approving the final plan and cost estimate to authorize the purchase of items and for approving competitive bidding of street, tree, and sidewalk decorative brick installation for the Bremer Avenue Streetscape Project.
I'll move approval of Resolution 20-08, approving the final plan and not to exceed amount of $240,000 to authorize the purchase of items and for approving competitive bidding of street, tree, and sidewalk decorative brick installation for the Bremer Avenue Streetscape Project.
Second.
Motion and a second. An open discussion here. I'm gonna take precedence before we get into public comment on this item. I will open it up to that. I did have the occurrence to visit another community last week after Monday's meeting, totally by coincidence. So I'll let Carla get up, and she's got some photos that she's going to share on the projector and on your screens at home and on YouTube. So I had an opportunity to visit Iowa Falls for business on Wednesday, February 12th, which was just 2 days after this item was on the agenda here in Waverly the first time. As I finished my business, I decided to go downtown to see what they had going on in their business district. Again, it was with no intent that I chose to do this, other than I typically will choose to visit downtown to see what's going on. Upon my arrival at approximately 11:40 a.m., I quickly noticed that a streetscape program must have been coordinated within the last few years. Another item is I had to circle the block twice to find an open parking spot, so it is a vibrant downtown with businesses. This is a great indicator of either a well-employed downtown district or a well-patronized downtown district, or both. I walked 2 of the 3 blocks of this corridor and decided to take some photos here to potentially show with our community. And after speaking with James, and thought it was valid to do so. So the first 2 photos, this one and then the second one, show business frontage with a clean appearance and ample room for pedestrian traffic. It's adorned with lighting, trash receptacles, permanent concrete benches with planters and pedestal fan-shaped bike posts. They have a brick enhancement in their sidewalk system that extends further into the traffic path than ours here in Waverly does. They also have some square planters that have remained in place that had seasonal greenery in them. As you can see in this photo as well, they incorporated brick into the parking area. The second photo, I think, shows that brick in the parking area a little bit. You have to look for it. But in the photo 2, here's the detail photo of the permanent bench in ground planter, photo 3 actually. Each block had 2 of these on either side. So these are a permanent fixture with a planting on the curb side in ground, so it's not something easily taken away. So photo number 3 in this, the next 3 photos, you can see where bench seating has been incorporated. These were not attached to the ground and were a commercial type product. The trash cans were also a commercial type product. One thing to note here is the table by the bench in the last photo, I believe. Don't want to race to them, but I'll get to it. It's kind of hard to see. There's a little bench there at the end, on the near end of the bench there up by the building. That was not part of the streetscape plan. It's very evident this is an item from a home store or possibly Walmart. The frame was a thin gauge metal, and I think the business owner probably put it out there to further support what's going on in their downtown. At the end of each block, there was a historical photo collage with captions highlighting the community. This is the front and back of the same sign. The arch bridge that carries Highway 65 through Iowa Falls is an iconic focal point for the community. You can see where they brought that into the design of these storytellers at the base. As I made my way to what I had identified would be my choice location for lunch, I had the opportunity to walk by a pocket park. I noticed on the front edge there was another bench, another trash can, and a bicycle rack that was effectively off the pedestrian path, but yet accessible for use. In the next photo, as I was able to see into the pocket park, I noticed 3 concrete picnic tables, one of which was handicap accessible. There were also additional small planters. The winding path led to a parking lot behind the park and across the alley, to which I had to go because the restaurant didn't accept credit debit cards. So you had to use the ATM and go through the pocket park to get to it. The final photo is of the Princess Pizzeria. Not giving them a shout out necessarily, but it's important to know their history, I feel. Founded in 1915 by Greek immigrant cousins, the pizzeria joined with the sweets shop in town in 1928 that was owned by yet another cousin. On Christmas Day of 34, the pizzeria burnt to the ground. The following year, they reopened. The 25-foot soda fountain is thought to be the largest remaining soda fountain in the world, right?
Carla only has the picture of it after it burned to the ground.
Yeah, oh, you might not have, I'm sorry. It's a very ornate building, trust me. It's okay. Sorry to put you in a panic. As an independent and family-owned business, they take great pride in their establishment. It's got African mahogany booths and really old archaic mirrors on them. It's a really neat place if you get in there to try it. So I went in and was seated and asked the waitress if anyone from management ownership was available. She said they were not. I asked if she may be able to give me some insight as to the atmosphere of the downtown district. The lady advised me that she was probably the best person to talk to about the downtown situation, as she had had worked at the Princess for 21 years. Being open 104 years, the Princess was. She's worked there 1/5 of the time. She noted that the streetscape plan was undertaken 5 years ago and that it was overdue for their community. She didn't comment on the effectiveness of the improvements, but did state the price tag of the entire project was hefty for the few blocks that it affected. I found the price tag on this streetscape plan was part of a $7 million project similar to our Bremer Avenue project with roadway utilities and the streetscape. Waitress made a comment that all businesses in the corridor were affected heavily by the reconstruction project. They're glad that it's over with and they can, begin to reap the benefits. I asked if they had trees before the current arrangement. She stated they did not, and she couldn't remember if they ever did have them down there. I asked if there were alternate plans, and she said yes, there had been. I asked how she felt the city had engaged with businesses, and she politely declined to comment. After I felt our conversation had pretty much concluded, I then introduced myself as your mayor and explained my reason for the questions and thanked her for her time as the restaurant was getting busier with the lunchtime. So very coincidental that I would turn left instead of right after my meeting and decide to go downtown. It isn't a personal sales pitch that these things are great or not. It's just another viewpoint of a community and what they've got. And I was informed by our city administrator that there were people that visited Iowa Falls and looked over what they had going on as kind of a sister city for streetscape, essentially. I saw a lot of different things there that work for their community. Whether they work for our community, I'm not the expert in that. So I just wanted to share that. I felt that it was important. So at this time, I would encourage and like to hear from the community. And if anybody would like to take the podium, I don't want to go all night, but I do want to hear from people. So I think the council wants to hear as well. I did get emails myself, and I forwarded them on if they were requested, from Paul Stevenson, Gene Schlomer, Amanda Rampton, Krista Dolash, Joanne Jones, Darwin Ritkers, Brittany Dirks, Phil Trimble, Melissa Wilkins, Mark Hubbard, Gene Schlomer, Patricia Coffey, Cindy Hendrickson, Charles Infelt, Ann Segerman, and Tom Hicks. That's not all inclusive, and may have missed one or two, but and there was a scattering between support and opposition both. So I don't have them indicated that way on this list. So. Go ahead. Absolutely.
Ryan for X129 Augusta Lane. First of all, thank you, council, mayor, for your service to Waverly. I know this is a lot of time, and these decisions are hard. I just wanted to step back a little bit, give a little bit of process, and if anybody has any questions, certainly. At the time of the first streetscape meetings, I was the chamber president at the time. So I can speak a little bit to the process. I heard some of the discussion last week about questions about who was included, what the process was. I do recall, I don't have exact dates. I was kind of going through I ran out of time today. I was going to pull a lot of this together. I could see 7 dates on my calendar that we had meetings. Some of them were at Cobblestone, some of them were open to a lot of the early ones were open to the public. So I can tell you the discussions at the time were often about what do we do? We need to own this. We need to make this good for Waverly. There certainly is not a secret agenda or anything going on there. It was about trying to get insight from the businesses. We went as far as to send people walking up and down. I know Bo and Cindy Ellison did that, and we had some of the results results brought back to the committee. But when we looked around the room, we questioned, are we representative of downtown? I am not. I have a business on Bremer Avenue, but it's not downtown. So it was important to me personally that we represented those businesses, because personally I don't want a tree in front of my business, and I don't want to put one in front of somebody else's business, but there is also a greater good to look at and to figure out what that balance is. So we had multiple, there were open meetings at the beginning. We tried to get more input. We tried to recruit members to the group. By all means, if you said you wanted to be part of the streetscape committee, you were welcomed with open arms. We wanted the input. So I just wanted to offer that, a little bit of that as a background. But the original idea came from the architect that the city funded. So that, and I thought they did a very good job, and they walked us through. So we did a lot of this. We did hours of this, looking at benches, and should they be round, and should they be square. You know, this is not what I do for fun, but I was down there because I thought it was important. So we tried to, work through a lot of those things, and it's like anything else. I mean, you're going to have people that are going to like the plan. You're going to have people that don't like the plan. So you got to try and figure out what works for most people. And I don't know that the process was perfect, but it certainly did take into account people that were willing to offer their time. And some people don't show up, and some people are going to complain, but they still don't show up. So how do you account for that? So the process, I thought, albeit not perfect, I felt it was open and voices were heard. I want to keep my comments brief, and I'm a little, I just want to talk about one more thing, and that's whether or not to fund something like this at all. So I heard some comments that thought it seemed like too much, or maybe it's a waste of money. This is not a waste of money. $240,000 is a lot of money. I get that. But I didn't have time to pull all the numbers together, but I just grabbed one block. I think it was the second block over. And you looked at the taxable value. Now, you understand that businesses are taxed higher than homes. Homes have a credit. I don't understand all this. James does, and he's the guy to go to for this. But there are some tax credits for businesses, but they're not near as hefty. So if you took one block, and I just did the north block, I think it was the second block over, I added up all the taxable. This is the actual taxable income, and I realize the city does not get all this. The county gets some, and again, see James about that. But one block was $23,194. And that's just on the north side, that one block. And then I took the first, it's actually the second housing block, because it just looked representative. The taxable revenue of that one block on the north side was $8,810. So you're looking at what you're doing tonight, voting on, is an investment. It's not a cost. This is what generates your taxes. This is what generates your experiences for your community members. This is what generates jobs. This is what amenities are. Retailing in the next century is not just a function of, I need something, I'm going to go get it. Retailing now with Amazon, we're all trying to compete. And the biggest thing that we can do is make an experience out of it. Streetscape is part of the experience, and it's worth investing in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Meyer.
Thank you, Ryan. Mayor, City Council. Don Meyer, current chair of the Chamber Board, since we're in the chamber mode here. I just briefly want to say our current Chamber Board is very much in support of this project. Yes, we know when the project was started 4 years ago, surveys were done with the businesses. Not everybody was in favor of it, but many of them were. We know there have been some concerns with trees maybe blocking views of the businesses. I think there's been some good adjustments made to alleviate some of those concerns. And we want to be partners as a chamber in helping this project go forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Don.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Travis Tolliver, Executive Director for the Chamber of Commerce. I want to certainly thank my past chair and my current chair for coming this evening and speaking to the project. I just wanted to give a few comments with regards to the Chamber's role in the project. Ryan alluded to a few of those. I just want to elaborate on those a little bit, and then also, too, maybe to answer some questions that were asked with regards to the Chamber's involvement in last week's council meeting. So just to build off of what the mayor talked about earlier in the meeting, Iowa Falls was an exchange community that we had a partnership with last year through Main Street Iowa. We had we had volunteers from our community go to their community to give a first impression survey, and then of course vice versa. A lot of the comments from our visitors to their community was talking a lot about how beautiful their streetscape was, how it enhanced their downtown. On the other end, the bulk of the comments from their volunteers coming to our community was the lack of streetscape and how beautiful it would be if streetscape was implemented in Waverly. So one thing to consider. Like Ryan said, our first streetscape meeting took place in May of 2016. It was a committee made up of volunteers, city and chamber staff, but our volunteers represented businesses on both East and West Bremer, both chamber and non-chamber members, and the discussion really honed around in that first meeting, getting an understanding of what businesses wanted along the street with regards to streetscape. I'll remind you, 2016, the Bremer Avenue project had not started yet, but we knew it was coming, and we knew that sidewalks would be taken out, so all the old trees would be taken out, benches removed, anything that had anything to do with streetscape would be removed, including the bricks that were on the sidewalk. So we had volunteers, like Ryan alluded to, that went out on foot and talked with businesses. We tried to get as many businesses as we could to talk to us about streetscape and different aspects of it. There was questions about trees, planters, bricks on the sidewalks, pedestrian crosswalks, bump outs, banners and flags on light poles, trash receptacles, and seating areas with benches. The survey results from that, we accumulated all of them together that we could get. With regards to trees, businesses were 50-50. Businesses wanted trees, other businesses didn't want trees. With regards to planters on the blocks, the majority of them agreed. Another majority agreed on sidewalks with brick, although they didn't want a brick in the same place. And if you recall, brick was in the middle of the sidewalk then, and then we've now since moved it to the 4-foot edge of the curb side of the sidewalk. The majority agreed about crosswalks and having bump outs to make more safe pedestrian distance crossing the street. We also had a majority that were in favor of banners on the antique light poles, which we've already purchased those banners. They will be going up as soon as the weather turns, hopefully soon. And the majority of them were in favor of trash recyclables and benches along the street. They got actually very specific, and we approximated 2 cans and 2 benches or seating areas per block per side. And so that was the results of our survey that we took back in 2016 of businesses with regards to streetscape. We then took that information and handed it over to AHTS architects. Larry, who's in the gallery here, took that information and kind of started building the concept of a design for streetscape. And once AHTS went in contract with the city, the chamber kind of let the city take over the project from there. We were an assisting model at that point, and we were a resource and a supporter of it ever since. Why streetscape was a question I think that was asked last week, and I think first and foremost, talking with businesses last week with regards to streetscape, they wanted to have what was taken from them, basically returned to the street, which were the trees, planters, seating areas. I mean, we've got the benches now that we had before, but more of those to make and create more of a destination. I had one business owner tell me that downtowns are meant to be experienced from the sidewalk and not from moving vehicles, and streetscape provides multiple elements to attract and welcome customers and visitors into downtown. This creates commerce and an awareness of charm that gets communicated to people beyond our city limits, and I couldn't have said it better myself. The benefits of streetscape from a government or business viewpoint, I'd like to refer to an article by Simon White entitled Improving Our Streetscapes as an Economic Development Strategy. Talks about streetscape saves money for local governments and makes money for businesses and is integral for the long-term fiscal and economic health of the community. It increases tax revenues and reduces tax burdens. It attracts new businesses, increases the efficiency of the labor market, provides greater stability in times of uncertainty and rising energy costs, invests in public funds to stimulate private investment, increases local capital circulation, and provides a foundation for long-term fiscal and economic health and competitiveness, which is certainly what we want to do with regards to streetscape. Another question that rose last week was trees, and I just want to speak briefly to that. Trees are an essential component for streetscape. Communities our size, smaller, larger, it doesn't matter. You go into their downtown urban settings, especially where there's retail, you're going to see trees. And trees, we felt, was a vital part of our downtown and our streetscape design. Originally, we had planned for 3 trees per block per side, but after looking at the surveys that came back and the comments made from businesses, we decided to eliminate the mid-block tree so as to open up the majority of the block for visibility from the street. So having a tree on either end would still be able to appease those who still wanted trees. Also, too, with regards to that, trees that were not big and bushy, but trees that would grow tall and slender. And these species of trees are designed actually for streetscape, and Larry can probably speak more to that. But those are the species of trees that we wanted to include in our design, so as to again try to minimize that visual inability for signs and business storefronts to be seen. I'm going to quote here too from an article by Dr. Dorwart about why street trees are so essential for our cities. And she says, ample research indicates that street trees provide plenty of pragmatic benefits in terms of urban planning and environmental wellness, such as shade from heat and relief from humidity, making streets more walkable and bikeable, and lowering the average electricity bills of surrounding households. They also lower the average driving speed, making roadways safer to pedestrians and drivers alike. And there's even evidence that they improve the health of nearby residents, lower crime rates, and drastically increase property values in that area. Let's talk about trees and businesses for a second, and I think in your packet you received some information from Bill from an article by Dr. Wolf from the University of Washington talking about trees mean business. And one of the things that I really found interesting from that article is that the consumers that she surveyed claimed that they would be willing to pay 9% more in small cities and 12% more in large cities for the equivalent goods and services in business districts having trees. I'm going to refer back to Councilman Schneider's comments at the budget meetings where he wanted to try to increase retail sales without growing new businesses. And so that's one way that we do that, is we attract people through our streetscape, through building an environment and just creating place for our retail community. Finally, I think incorporating trees in urban environment fosters a greater respect for nature and stirs our innate instinct to connect with it. I think a lot of us don't get out enough into nature and be able to see it, and so when you connect with nature in an urban setting, whether you're experiencing shopping or restaurants or any kind of visitation whatsoever, trees are a vital part of that. And so I just hope that you will find that we've done the research, we've talked to the businesses, we're passionate about this project and this design, and we know that adding this element, which I think again caps off the Bremer Avenue project and helps to bring back the beauty and the charm of our downtown for customers that live here and for visitors alike. It certainly is a tourism factor, it's a commerce factor, and we couldn't be in more support of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. And just a minute.
Well, I find myself in an interesting situation.
I'm gonna let Steve go, and then I'll get to you, Josh.
You calling it after me?
No, I just said I was gonna let you speak before I let Josh speak. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Steve Agley, Waverly, Iowa, and I have been on the design committee for the chamber for a number of years and served on the streetscape committee that Ryan was referring to. But I'm the old guy here, and I've got archives that go back before the streetscape didn't get invented with our committee, Ryan. Streetscape's been around for a long time here, looked at for a long time. I found a downtown concept plan in 2012 that was prepared for the city of Waverly by the chamber at the time, talking about a lot of parts of the community, but particularly emphasizing Main Street, and outlined a Bremer Avenue bridge and streetscape, referred to the same amenities that we're talking about installing now. These have been on the radar for a long time: benches, planters, the receptacles, and some bike. I think there's some bike guards that are involved here, and tree protection is the way we incorporated some opportunity to accommodate the bikers, is that they can utilize those tree guards as a way to lock up their bikes. So, and probably more efficient than having a rack that takes up, a lot of the space of Main Street. So I think that's a good part of the plan too. But I want to point out that also part of the plan where trees are also a part of Waverly's downtown streetscape. The growth of the current trees blocks signage for several storefronts. The implementation of a tree replacement program would allow for replacement of trees where the size starts to hinder and would allow for replacement of trees where the size starts to hinder the look and the feel of the downtown district. We were listening a long time ago to the people on Main Street and taking that into account and realizing that we had a problem. We have had trees actually on Main Street in Waverly going back into the 90s, but we didn't know what we were doing. Looking back, the process, and Larry will be the expert on this, is to what it takes underneath the surface of the sidewalk to allow sufficient space for the trees roots and for water to have access there is not a simple process, but we didn't. We waded right in there and put them in. The other thing is we weren't very good at species selection, and some of the trees got taller than we wanted and bushier than we wanted, and that's where we came up with these issues from the very beginning, that as the trees matured, some of them started to obscure signage of the business and even the visibility of the business, and we heard about that. And so in this plan in 2012, we reflect the fact that we fully intended to take care of that when we did the project, which again was reflected in what Brian commented when we renewed the project. One of the reasons you have to realize there's a gap here from the 2012 period to the time when this streetscape is coming back is the highway. Once we discovered that the highway project was going to be coming in and uprooting Main Street and the sidewalks and things of that nature, it made it impractical to think of any kind of major effort on Main Street, such as adding these amenities and all that. So that was the hiatus. We were getting back to it again, Ryan, when we formed our committee, and I just think the report that was done by the Chamber in 2012 for the city, it reflects in the report of the City of Waverly goal-setting report for July 30th of 2013, after the report that this concept was approved by the city for planning purposes. It's listed in there as an approved plan. And also, in terms of the amenities that are part of this, I would just like to say that over the years of what things we've considered, this is a very modest plan. And I think Ryan did a good job of explaining, the costs that are involved in the amenities that we're talking about. And these kinds of things are not cheap. That you mentioned a Walmart bench. We don't have any Walmart benches down there. You're talking about substantial expense because they're outside, they're exposed all the time, they're subject to the use and the abuse of the public every day of the year. And to have a lasting product that stays in good shape, and they're expected to, we're talking about decades. We have the metal products that we have, the benches and the receptacles that we have on Main Street, the planters that we've had on the bench. Those have been around for over a decade, and they look like they did the day we got them. Now, I know, there was that incident where 4 big football players picked that planter up off the bridge and dumped it over the side, and it cost us, we destroyed that thing. But you can't plan for that. You just can't plan for that. Other than that, we've had very good luck, and I think the city has had a good history of picking out quality products that give us value, and I think that's what they've done here. It just seems like a lot of money for a seat, but consider the environment that it's in. So just want to mention those things. And as Travis pointed out, Main Street, this is a part of a Main Street program that's statewide. I happened to come across in my archives as well this report that was given me, A Quarter Century of Change, 25 Years Main Street, Iowa, 1986 to 2011. This is a state level organization funded in part as economic development on the state level. And if you want to look at some comparisons, I think, Travis, have you got this over at the Chamber office? This mainly consists of pictures of the number of communities around the state that have implemented these programs, and it reflects the same kind of amenities that we're talking about here. So those kinds of things are things that typically are involved in this, and the Main Street organization came about because of a recognition that Main Street is a very special place in the community. I mean, it's the center of activity. It's often the signature place for the community, and that's why I think this is a good investment. So, thanks for your time. Sorry to take up so much of it.
Thank you, Steve. I'm not going to close it out to public, but Josh had a comment.
I find myself in an interesting situation because I'm not counsel, but yet I'm sitting up here. So I just wasn't sure if there was a protocol, if I should go down there.
Nope, you're good.
So I also took some time. I made some time, and I went to Decorah as we were compared to them last week. And went up there because I hadn't been up there for 15 years, and I wanted to see what it looked like currently. And then while I was there, I went into businesses and asked them if they thought that the goals that were set out were attained. Pretty much nobody thought that it increased any business. Every one of them said that they had their own draw, which was the reason why they were able to survive the construction processes that they went through. And they have each business has their own draw, and they don't really think they're sharing too many customers. Now the restaurants might share a customer with somebody that's there to buy others, clothes, for instance. I actually know people that have gone all the way to Decorah just for a famous pizza place out there. And so I asked them a lot of these questions of, did it improve business? Do you see anybody utilizing the benches? Do you really think it was a good thing? And they're like, well, it's pretty, but they couldn't really see any increase in business, and they didn't really, mention any of that, those kinds of things. I also took some pictures while I was up there, and I noticed that there was plenty of benches up and down, and there was no snow removed around the benches. That they were all covered in snow, and you can powder coat steel all you want. You bury it in snow every year, it's going to rust. But as far as making money, I asked everybody up there in Decorah, and basically they didn't really have much to say for it. And then I took Friday, and I spent almost my entire day, and I talked to different businesses downtown. I deliberately went into stores that I would never normally step foot in because I was looking for a different opinion than my own, as to shape my opinion to be as fair as possible. And these businesses were concerned that we're just spending money to spend money. Some were for it, but even they were looking at the dollar amount and thinking, I don't know if it's worth it. Then I asked if you thought that there was if you could put a bench out in front of your store, if it would increase business, wouldn't you have already done that? And then I was made aware of, I guess there's an ordinance where they're not allowed to put stuff on the sidewalk. I learned something. So it seems strange that I went to a place that had this done and we compared ourselves to, and they are not claiming to get the results that we are hoping for in the future. I guess I don't know how to make that make sense in my head. Something I thought was interesting was the process to where we got. So the city's got to do basically we start with the city has to do the construction project. So then it goes to the chamber and they canvass the businesses and they go, what do you want? And they just poll it. Then it goes to committee and they kind of figure that out, and then goes back to the city, and then it goes to an architect. So I want to know, after it went to the architect, when it came back, did we try and cut anything from the architect's plan? And I'd like to compare it to my business. So I do a lot of kitchen remodels, and I have people that they look in magazines, they look online, and they want fancy stuff. I go back, I figure everything up, I figure out the price, I make some quick drawings, and I figure out what it's going to cost. Then I go back to them. This is the part that I think was lacking. You go back to them and show them the plan, show them the price, and then have a further discussion of every project I've ever done, every project I've ever been a part of, and I've done some pretty fancy projects. Everyone said, what can we cut? Still get the same feel. So we still have the same feel, we still have the same overall look, but we just lower the dollar amount. So I've looked through some of this and I haven't seen where that happened, and I think that's a disconnect. Everybody does this. Every construction project. You got, caviar dreams, and then you realize that you can't afford caviar. But you want to make it look like you can afford caviar. So I guess my biggest concern is, where is the discussion about cutting back? So just an example, what if whenever the architect came back, we'd have said, you know what, let's just forget the brick, which I also found out no business owner I talked to would shed a tear if that brick disappeared. Everyone that I talked to said that could go. But anyway, going back to my example, what if the brick would have been left off of the plan? Then that could have paid for the trees. So we'd be where we're at now, only we wouldn't have the sidewalk that everybody hates. We'd already have paid for the trees. So that's just kind of a broad overview of my experience.
So, hang on just a moment, Matt. Anybody else in the public before we really focus on having a discussion and trying to reach a decision up here? Anything else? Not saying this is the final call, but okay, Matt.
Well, I'd like to open up with just explaining my reasons for, harshness last week. And I was pretty nice last week, I think. But thus, I guess from my viewpoint, we did just come off 16, 17 hours of budget. And this isn't, when I see a $240,000 expense, what I'm looking at is 5 salaries, all right? But this isn't a $240,000 expense, and when I'm asking those questions, I'm not getting the answers that I need. I need to know what is annual maintenance cost, not that Park and Rec has room. For example, we've got Public Works, it's maxed out in people, so if Public Works was to have to water the flowers, they'd have to add another person. So we need to know mathematically what those numbers are. Depreciation, these are 20-year trees, I guess, but I still don't know what's depreciation on the garbage cans and all the other pieces, the flowers, how long do those last? That should all be calculated in terms of what the cost is of a project, as well as, interest on the debt, but that's minimal. So again, that's just from my mindset, I just want to explain to the public, that's where, and the Streetscapes Committee, that's where I'm coming from. And I'm definitely not at all against beautifying. This is something that we have to do in some form. But one of the challenges I have here is all successful projects must be done together as a community. You know, I talked to 9 businesses within this Bremer thing, and only one of them had been contacted in the last week, and I'm wondering why this is even on the agenda so fast. I thought the directive was to talk to the businesses. That's the clear directive I heard. Matter of fact, I went back a year ago, I think it was about a year, June or so, I believe the previous council had given the directive to talk to the businesses. Apparently that hadn't been done. Well, here we are a week later, and please tell me what the effort is, because, and I'll have some questions after this, but there will be a return on investment in this. I mean, it does create a more vibrant downtown, so please don't mistake me that I'm trying to kill this project, but to ramrod this through would totally be the wrong thing for the community right now. People are worked up about this particular project, and one of the reasons they're worked up is because it's part of creating a livable and walkable environment, which is also tied to the road diet. So the way that this project has come down is just not sitting well with the public. So, I believe a beautifying project could have as much as a 10% overall lift. I think I even saw some numbers in the packet that were close to that, or 12% or something like that. There's really no way of knowing, so I don't know how they calculate those. It's really an educated guess. But so, what was the effort made to contact the businesses since Monday?
I can speak a little bit to that from what I'm aware of. I know that Chamber had some legwork. I think some city staff had some legwork, whether it was physical legwork, phone or email. I know that the Chamber sent out an email to their membership requesting, a form letter or email to be sent out. I was only made aware of that because I was in a business that wasn't a Chamber member, and they had the email forwarded to them from a Chamber member. So it was a little disconcerting there that not every business got that email.
I think the businesses that have never been talked to or consulted to. And
okay.
They're furious over this.
So hang on just a second. Is the fact that not every business got that communication is the message that I got there, and that business owner echoed some of the same things that you've already shared, Matt, about the bricks and everything else. Maybe that's why they choose not to be a member of the Chamber. That's their business. But again, I've heard some of the same chatterings that you were just making reference to there, as far as being communicated with. And I just made a note here that with my orientation meeting with Mr. Meyer and the Chamber staff was very intriguing to understand that they want to treat all businesses in the community as equally represented. However, in that same statement, I wish that communication was to all of the businesses to reach out. But I feel that all businesses are participating members in our community. So if Travis or Don or another person from the Chamber wants to respond to that directly, that's fine, or after the fact. But I received that handful of emails, and from what I saw of the form email, I only had it from 2 people that forwarded it on. There were other business owners that drafted their own. So not that they didn't trust what you had written, but they took the time. Maybe that was beforehand. But I think there was due diligence for soliciting on the calling. Now, whether anybody feels that it was done quicker than what they thought it should have taken, that's a matter of an opinion.
When we left the meeting Monday, we had a lot of discussion about this. We didn't even have a chance to present this to council. The minute it was time to talk, we were hit with a bunch of questions. We couldn't even talk. It was defensive mode the entire time. We didn't have all this prepared. We didn't expect it to be the case after 3.5 years of this project. A project fully funded by a prior council under budget. And that's what I guess is the most concerning. We're going to start picking apart these things at this level. For people to say we weren't contacted. The whole thing was a discussion of trees last week, if I remember correctly. So we tried to contact every single business impacted by a tree. A lot of them we could, some we couldn't, they weren't there. We had staff go out and try and hit the street as well. We tried to get everybody that we could. Is it on sooner than we anticipated? It is a little bit. We also have a grant that we're running up against, which is part of the premise to why it's on. It's a $25,000 grant that we have a really good shot, if not a lock, in getting once this goes. We didn't want to lose that opportunity to maybe have $25,000 more to help fund this. So as far as our comments, did we contact or not, our focus was on the trees, since that seemed to be the one thing everybody was complaining about. Everybody, as in the one email we actually saw prior to that meeting, was about a tree. I've contacted that individual, we've talked it through, we understand, things are fine.
Correct.
So at that point in time, we looked at the plans. If you look at them, some are in front of the hotel. A lot of the trees we're discussing aren't even planned to be out there. Quick Star, Walgreens are not even planned trees. If you look at the actual plan where it says future, they're not even talked about here. But we're having all these discussions and all these rantings about these things that aren't even actually happening on a project funded and under budget. And that's what's concerning to me. How much time are we going to spend on $240,000? You have $6 million to deal with tonight as well later on. That's not funded any of it yet. This one was. And that's why I guess it's confusing to me is what are we doing here? It's a policy decision. If you want streetscape, this is what it's going to look like. If you don't want streetscape, vote against it and we don't do it.
Well, I think the
It's that
issue I
simple.
have
Don't interrupt me, please. What I'm saying is, this is nitpicking at certain things that have been done for 3 years. It was wide open. It's been on the websites. It's been everywhere. I mean, what else do you want us to do with this? If you as a business owner, somebody in the community don't want to come make a statement, send an email, contact any of your council people here. I think you all are very accessible. A lot of you work, you're downtown, et cetera. Then what are we supposed to do? Go in and try and pound on every door every time we have a decision to be made? I guarantee other cities didn't do that either. That's the issue at hand is what do you want the future of downtown to look like? Is it the business owner there today, the one that'll be here 10 years from now, the one that'll be there 20 years from now? I think one of the letters we received said it very well. You're soliciting advice from people that are maybe not going to be here in 5 years, 10 years. What if they have a completely different opinion at that time? So it's taking a snapshot of today versus what it may be 5, 10, 20 years from now. What do you want your community to look like? I mean, we're fine with wherever you want to go as a council. We have people here supporting it. I'm sure there's people that don't support it, but it's a funded project. The prior councils approved it. It's under budget. I'm not sure what else we should be doing with this. And that's my comments on it.
And I can reassure that the individual that you talked about getting the letter before the meeting, I talked to that person 2 hours before this meeting in person and shook their hand. We have no issue.
Correct.
So the one communication that we had prior to this in written form has been alleviated to the best of my knowledge.
And just prior to this meeting, I came from a business that has a tree, not a proposed one. They have not been talked to. There's plenty of they're open all the time. Not sure why. That's why I'm concerned. Question here, who bears liability on this? Like if somebody was to trip over the whatever, flower pot.
Tree or trip over what?
Bike rack or whatever.
Well, it's our right of way. I mean, it's our.
So it'd be city responsibility?
I don't know for sure.
If it's open and obvious, it wouldn't be a liability issue anyway. If somebody trips over something that's open and obvious, and you're taking care of it to make sure that it doesn't have a hazard, it wouldn't be something we'd be liable for anyway.
All right. Well, question from a business, so I wanted to clarify it. And did we purchase flowers already? I thought I heard that.
We had to budget for flowers. We have flowers in the parks. We have flowers in different places. And the staff did start buying some flowers, but we can use them wherever we can in the city.
James, could you clarify? I know there were some questions last week and in emails we got about whether funds that have already been designated for a certain project can be transferred.
Sure. It depends on what you want to do with it. If you look at the end of the agenda you're going to be talking about tonight, you have a couple of hearings on there. One is for general obligation bonds for general corporate purpose. One is a central corporate purpose. The two cannot mix. Streets, bridges, things of that nature, those are of an essential. They're essential to operate as a city, essential corporate purpose. Ball fields, rec things, there's a whole list of those that are now, they are actual general corporate purpose. They have limitations by size of population. So since this money was borrowed under the general obligation bond for essential corporate purpose, you can't turn around and use it for ball fields for an essential. You can't mix the two together unless you want to go through a bunch of hearings. And right now, there is not a code-driven way of doing this, and preferably, I don't want there to be. The last thing I want is more people in Des Moines to tell us what we can and can't do when it comes to this. The common sense approach we've taken, if it's for a similar project, so if you had leftover proceeds from a bond, which we did in the past, we've utilized them for things that are identical to what the bond was taken for. But if you don't do an actual project, my stance would be to council, you pay the debt back with that you took on with that project. We don't pass it off to somewhere else because the community was understanding you're going to use that money for that. If you don't, it's a bait and switch situation for me. We just don't do the project and we don't fund something else on the side with it. Then you're skirting around the reasons for the law and actually having these hearings set in place. So if the project is not done, my premise is we pay back the debt we took out with it on it, or pay down the debt we have, we use it towards our debt. If you do it and there's money left over, it's a different situation. You could use it for a similar project, whether it be street, bridge, whatever it would be. It's a very small dent. It's not a large sum of money when you look at the amount of projects we're looking at, $2, $3, $4 million projects. But that is what you would have to do. And there may be or may not be a hearing needed. I have to check the bond attorneys on that. I don't think there would be if it's a similar purpose. If it's something little suspect, it's not quite exactly what we use the funds for, it would be, but it can be done. But it's not good to mix the two together.
So in the forefront, it would open up debt capacity on the end.
A little bit.
Not substantially.
I mean, the scheme of it, you're talking 20, 30, 40 million. I mean, it's $200,000. It's not really.
But just for the.
From the proper standpoint of how you would want to do it financially, that would be my recommendation, is pay it back.
Okay.
Pay down the debt.
I had one other thing here, Mr. Mayor. I did talk with council and a member in Cedar Falls, because they do have a successful downtown, and I asked what makes this successful, and the answer was immediate and quick, and it was that the community did it together. And that is so critical in all of these projects. I can give you a laundry list of over 100 cities where this is not working, and as well as probably about a dozen where it's all out war with the citizens, the businesses in the city. And this is one of those examples that I'm not comfortable going down this road.
So I would like to thank all of the people who contacted me regarding their opinion on this project. I would say I heard a lot of valuable comments, both from people who supported it and people who had concerns. I would especially like to thank Ryan for giving his history of the process, how open the process was, and how everyone, if they wanted to, had the opportunity to get involved in the decision-making. I very much appreciate that. I had a very good conversation with an owner of not a downtown business, but an owner of one of the small industries in town, where they talk about the difficulty in getting workers and how hard it is to hire qualified workers. And the thing he said that struck me was, you have to remember that Waverly, they are in competition. We are in competition with Cedar Falls. We're not in competition with Shell Rock and Clarksville for people come to live in Waverly at Cedar Falls. And, you know, the value of our downtown is huge in terms of attracting people from Cedar Falls, which has a beautiful downtown district. And there's definite value in attracting residents. I mean, you can talk about the value to the business, but you can also just talk about the value to people who live in Waverly, how nice it is to have an attractive downtown. So I would like to thank all of the people who did the work on planning the streetscape. I would like to thank the staff for putting up with our questions and the people who kind of responded to give us that information. And this was quite a packet. I think there was lots of good information that came out in this packet. I appreciated being able to read the packet and understand why it was being brought back to this meeting so that we can get this grant approved in time for the February 28th deadline.
I also wanted to thank, the Chamber for their work over the last 4 years, the public, those that spoke tonight, that sent an email. I think there's a lot of people that have given their voice to this project over the years. I mean, Mr. Egley even said going back to 2012, people were talking about it. And so in my mind, it's been vetted a lot. And I also wanted to share another viewpoint. I think most people on the that are sitting at this desk have read this book. This gentleman who wrote this book, and I'll call him an expert, you can read his resume, but he's a consultant for dozens of communities that have turned them around. He's helped them grow. His book is called 13 Ways to Kill Your Community by Doug Griffiths. He says if you want to ensure your community fails, then don't paint. Of course, greater failure will come to your community if you include other de-beautification plans to the list. Don't dust or sweep or wash windows or mow grass or pick up garbage or plant flowers or anything else of the sort. Essentially, if you want to kill your community, then do nothing that will make it look visually appealing. It's just that simple. He goes on to say what we really should be considering is that first impressions are truly the beginning of everything. Your community may seem fine to you, but will people who drive or walk through it get that impression? Being aesthetically pleasing is not just a nice to have. It can't wait until everything else is done. We aren't simply attracted to aesthetically pleasing things. We actually judge things by their aesthetic value. A beautiful appearance is a telling sign about whether a community has confidence and pride in itself. I want to have pride in this community. For 5 cents on a tax levy, $5 a year, a beer, a cup of coffee for a $200,000 homeowner? Why aren't we doing this?
I guess I would just like to add, I think the question before us is we either do streetscape or we do not do streetscape. We can pick this thing until the bones are bleached out in the middle of the desert somewhere. I want to commend all the hard work that the design people have done on this project. There are some of the design aspects that I probably would have liked to have seen done differently, but I'm going to trust their judgment that this is what they wanted to have. And I also want to emphasize that, yes, maybe not 100% of the downtown merchants are in favor of 100% of this project, but you're never, ever going to have any project where 100% of the people are in favor of 100% of the project. I've always been a great supporter of this. I think it's a fantastic thing to do. I love the concept of trees. I was extremely upset when the tree by our business was cut down in preparation for the Bremer Avenue work, and would be very pleased to have trees put back in that location. My concern last week over the trees was to know if there was enough flexibility in the plans to accommodate those people who did not want to have a tree in front of their business. And I think that there has been some movement toward that. Obviously, there has been some of the people who were concerned about trees have been talked to, and I'm very, very pleased that those accommodations have at least been attempted. So, the bottom line is we either vote it up or vote it down.
Yeah, I would agree with Rod. I think my concern last week was more about how the process happened, whether people had been communicated with, whether there was flexibility. I appreciate the work of city staff. The packet was really helpful. The tree information from Paul and Eric was invaluable, and I know that it took a lot of work over the last week to flesh out the outline about how the process went over the last few years. I disagree with my colleague that this was ramrodded through. If so, it was the slowest ramrod job in the history of city government. I think that it's become an issue recently. And sure, like I said last week, when you see a $900 garbage can, yeah, there's a little sticker shock at first, but then when you realize how long it's going to sit out there and who's going to abuse it and what's going to happen to it with our weather, it makes sense. And I'm not a patio furniture expert. And so I have to trust the committee that put a lot of hours of work into this and the architect and our city staff that they are making the best judgment for the city as a whole. as someone said in one of the letters, and there were, I agree with Brian, very thoughtful letters on both sides of this issue, and every side that's a circular, there's a bunch of sides to this issue. So people were very thoughtful and obviously put time into communicating with us, and were respectful in their communication, and I appreciate that. But somebody said it's not just the merchants downtown, it's the towns downtown. And so I think that first impressions are really important, and the downtown and our whole merchant community, not just downtown, but south side, et cetera. Road construction was very stressful for everybody and hurt everybody, and I think we need to do whatever we can to support them. So I'm very satisfied that the communication process was thorough. You're never going to get a unanimous project. Shouldn't say never, I guess, but very rarely will you get a unanimous project from a whole group of people. But it sounds like most of the project's components had majority support. The trees were 50-50, and they did their best to be flexible about the positioning of those trees. I feel confident that city staff can handle it. They know what they're talking about when it comes to plants and flowers and trees, and so I think we should go forward with this.
I have some comments as well. I did bring up a lot of questions last week, and I think they were valid questions for any citizen or business owner. And some of my questions were answered. Thank you, James, in regards to, and it's Dr. Rathe for asking the legality question, because you answered that for me. Also, my question was, how did you determine who you asked? Because I got several emails saying that they were not asked. So that was, I guess, answered because Chamber asked people that were part of Chamber, I guess, and then the city phoned and marched up and down and asked who they could. So I guess that question was somewhat answered for me as well, as to why I was getting emails saying that, hey, nobody asked me, this is my opinion. Also, the comment of the trees were 50-50. And a lot of people then like the planters and the trash bins and the banners and the brick and stuff. With all the other emails I got as well, that was about what I got was 50-50 wanted the trees. And if we say 50-50 wanted the trees, then should we really spend money on the trees? If it was 50-50, I would probably agree more with it if we didn't have the trees and maybe the planters and the seeding, and kind of compromised and came midway. And is that a possibility? Another very big concern from several people was construction. Construction has been going on for a long time, and that has really hurt the business. So when we plant these trees, we're going to be uprooting sidewalks, is what I understand.
It's just the brick.
Just the brick that we spent quite a bit of money on already.
To open it up, make the pit, put the brick back.
That's part of the reason we're doing
So
what the brick
that's-
is, so it's easy to pull
That's
up
why it
and
costs
put back down.
$4,700.
So
to
that's
pull the brick,
part,
make
it's
the
going to be
pit,
some more
put it back.
construction going on downtown, and that was some of their concern, is it's additional construction going on downtown. My question was, how long is that construction going to take downtown?
How long does it take to put in a tree?
It's not all at once. It'll be tree by tree as they'll move, and we have to bid that out as part of the spec as to the timing of it, and they'll have to give us some idea. But when you're talking about, when we put it in the packet, I think, why it's $4,700. Only 400 is a tree. You're getting a root system, a base system there to make sure it's watered correctly. You don't use a certain sand to block the water so it infiltrates into the tree. And there's a lot of science to this to make sure that these guys are good. And we have horticulture guys right in the audience
Yeah.
with Paul and
Very good
Erickson
ones.
right there. That's who's going to orchestrate it. they've picked the trees, they know it's going to work in downtown, because you don't put just every tree you want downtown. It will not last, or it'll become a nuisance. These are not those trees. They're built for streetscape downtown.
So initially, we really don't have an idea of how long that construction will take on Bremer,
No,
on the
it's not going to be all at
sidewalk.
once. I mean, it's going to be tree by tree. So not everybody's going to be affected for 6 months, let's say. You'll be affected for a little bit of time if you even have a tree in your proximity. And as Rod said, we are trying to shift where we can. We're trying to fight water mains and water services. You can't put a tree in their water service.
Right.
So there's only certain sections it works. Some we have to shift already. What you saw on the map is an approximation where we'd like to see it. That may not be where it actually goes once you start getting into the brick. But we don't know exactly how long it will take to put each tree in, as it is a process to make sure they survive. And it may be that certain vendors are faster than other vendors. I don't know if we'll take that into consideration when we bid it, but it will be tree by tree, or maybe a couple trees at a time, but it will not be an entire downtown tore up like it was.
So you're saying this money has already been collected, we've already...
It's sitting in the account
and waiting, and we have to either use it, we don't have to use it all, or
Eventually
we need
do.
to just pay it back.
We legally have to spend this money in a certain amount of time, whether construction or purchase. There's certain limitations. We are audited by, so to speak, the federal government, because their bonds collected in full faith and credit of the city. You do have to spend it, or you're going to get jammed up through a little bit of an audit issue, arbitrage issues. We don't want any of that. So you have to spend that money at one point in time or another. So either pay it back down, or we put it to another project, but one way or another, it has to be spent. And this money arrived here in June of last year. That's how long we've been sitting, waiting to get this finalized.
If we were able to determine, this business does not want this tree here or there, and we saved a few, would we be able to allocate that money and throw some trees on the hill coming in? Or is that a separate project then? Is that?
It's not really streetscape. I mean, and it's not really an
It's the
allocated
entryway
area.
to downtown, and I guess I do hear that a lot. So.
I don't know. Like I said, the real cost of it was, building a base for the trees to put in. If we want to put extra trees in, do we have spare trees around? We can get trees. We can get trees. We can throw more trees in if you want, sure. But as far as you bonded money for it, I don't know.
I wanted to know if once these trees get big, can we move them to the golf course?
These aren't those quality of trees, these are ornamental.
I think it gets harder to move trees the bigger they get.
Right, but these are ornamental that aren't going to have that growth type for golf course use.
No, they're not made to grow.
No.
I think last week, we talked about them only lasting 15 or 20 years, and I think they're telling us that that's going to be longer than that.
Yeah.
It's going to be longer than that, and they're going to still look good.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, guys.
Give us a couple minutes, we'll talk a little bit about trees. I like to talk about trees with you.
Please introduce
Long
yourself.
meeting. So Paul Chevelle, Eric Sherritt, Vegetation Management. I think the idea was you're going to get 15 to 20 years, maybe longer, depending on the species, if you just plant a tree in a hole in that environment. With this particular setup, we're basically giving the soil volume and situation in which the tree could perform like it would, say, in the woods. Maybe not quite that long, but we're thinking 30, 40, 50 years.
I think it was talked about too that they'd be cut down when they reach too tall. These are meant to not outgrow the space we're planting them in too.
Right.
The big difference is the old trees that were out here, and they were planted in, 1992. It took them about 30 years to get that size, and they were planted, they were 30 or 40 to 60 foot or 30 to 40 foot wide trees. These are 6 to 15 foot wide trees. Us as tree guys, these are token trees. We got a tree. I mean, these aren't the giant shade trees that you've seen in some downtown districts that are really what they are. But let's, if I could, for 1 second, I've thought a lot about this, and I too, actually I've been to Decorah, my wife and I sat on a bench 2 different times going there, and we actually enjoy just the ambiance of the whole thing. Whether we're shopping at a gift store, going to the restaurant, it's a place we like to go and we enjoy. And so I have actually used those, but I can see what you're saying. And I actually got the opportunity this weekend to go to Mount Vernon, which I actually found out about a little bit through a little of this research. And they had street trees, they had benches. Their benches weren't fancy. and some lights underneath some of them, and they had $900 garbage cans. That's just the price of these things. I mean, nobody picked out the most expensive one. You know, they probably come from a local place like K Park, you know, that's right there in Janesville. But when I look at Waverly, and I look at what's around this town, people talk to me about all the old maples and talk about Arlington Cemetery. Arlington Cemetery wasn't just developed as a normal cemetery. They hired in an architect from Chicago to design that old section of that cemetery to be like a park. It's documented in the library in a book all about the history of Arlington Cemetery. From the beginning, this town thought that way. For 15 years, our letterhead had a tree on it. We spent how much money right out in front of here to save a tree? Planted trees right out here. To not go put trees downtown, to me, who are we representing? The city that we live in? Or some different place? So.
Thanks, Paul.
I think it's important to recognize no one on council, I don't think, is against trees at all. I think if anything, we like trees and we want trees.
Can we call the question?
I would like to entertain Mr. Kangas before we get to that.
Just my thoughts, and I hadn't talked about this on it, but I've been on this since the beginning, since Brian actually, 2012, I was on council. The original streetscaping was talked about. And this is, it's a $250,000, almost $250,000 part of the project. But if you think about it, it's the cherry on top of the Bremer Avenue project, which was
About $13 million.
okay. So $250,000 on top of a $13 million project for the entire city. This really is kind of the dressing. This is the fine touch on top of it. And yeah, there's sticker shock on there. You look at some of these things and you go, boy, I can go and buy a bench at Walmart for $50. I don't need to spend $2,000. But again, it's the use. It's how it's going to be, where it's going to be placed. It's a lot of it. Going back historically, looking at that summary and history that was in our plan too, you can see in there how many trees were originally thought of. There were a lot of trees, and we have cut back a lot. I mean, they've listened to people that say, we don't want that many trees, we don't want to block, and so they've cut back the number of trees. They've adjusted. I think the committee has done a terrific job of listening to the concerns as they were presented from the original concepts that were presented to us on the whole project and what it was going to look like when we're done, to now incorporating, and even as we've now added in the South Riverside project and trying to draw that in as well. And so this is a project that is kind of tying up what's been a long process of construction, but it's going to put that last little bit on top and really make it nice.
Right. I just want to articulate what James had said there, that this funding was from a previous budget. It was set aside for this. It is now before us to utilize. It's time to utilize it, as it was indicated to in that budget. So I just want to thank everybody that came up, that emailed, that I've talked to personally, this in the dais, everybody around, all the council and staff, for the positive decorum with dignity and respect. It sets a precedence for future matters that are going to be before us. So I think that precedence needs to carry forward. There are difficult decisions that must be made, and with that, I will entertain a call to question from Councilwoman Rathe. Roll call vote, please.
Glaser.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Rathe.
Yes.
Schneider.
No.
Beaufore.
No.
Bergen.
Yes.
Drenkow.
Yes.
On a vote of 5-2, Resolution 20-08 is approved. Resolution 20-15, a resolution approving, I'll give just a moment here for a few. Thank you very much for coming and being a part of the conversation, folks. Come on up, sir. I certainly can. Don't be bashful.
You want to stay for the budget?
If you turn around and wave to the camera, you can show your teacher that you were here.
You were here. Yeah, I don't need to sign it then.
Right here.
Right there on the,
Here, sorry.
not the first one, but skip a couple?
Right here.
This one?
Yep. right
Okay.
there.
Trust me, it won't be worth anything in the future, so. Thank you, thank you.
Have a good night.
Yep, you too. Thanks.
All right, continuing on regular business item number 2, resolution 20-15, a resolution approving a grant agreement for CN Eco Connections from the Ground Up grant for $25,000 to complete the Bremer Avenue Streetscape Project 2019-2020.
I will move approval of Resolution 20-15 as read by the mayor.
Second.
Motion and seconded by everybody. Any discussion here?
I just do the brief thing that says, when we looked at this grant, we actually have the grant if we want it. We do have to qualify for it, which means we have to spend some money. But some of the money we have to spend is for our benefit, because they'll bring people in that will spend time in our community, give us suggestions, work with our staff, tell us about things that they can help us with. We also get access to a symposium that we hope that Eric and Paul will get to go to, which is 3 days of talking about urban forestry, urban planting, plant planting, parks. What's that?
He's going to be in heaven.
I know, we won't get him back and say, listen. So we do have to spend some money for this. We took that in consideration, thinking let's get $20 or $22,000 to go towards our project, and it'll be a good thing. So as long as we got it, I think we should use it.
Right, and I would appreciate, or want to extend my appreciation for not making this a condition of the previous resolution as a bartering tool. Thank you.
That's why we didn't mention last week. We don't want to lean that in there because it wasn't really part of the project.
Correct.
As if we could. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Hearing no further discussion, roll call vote. Carla?
Kangas.
Yes.
Rathe.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Beaufore.
Yes.
Birgen.
Yes.
Drenkow.
Yes.
Glaser.
Yes.
On a vote of 7-0, 20-15 is approved. Resolution 20-16 is item number 3, which is a resolution approving the purchase and installation of 5 Panasonic Toughbooks, Havis docking stations, and mounting kits for the Waverly Police Department.
I will move approval of Resolution 20-16, approving the purchase and installation of 5 Panasonic Toughbooks, Havis docking stations, and mounting kits for the Waverly Police Department from Birgen KDV of Waterloo, Iowa, for the purchase price of $20,231.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Comments, Mr. Bronner or Chief Purcell?
Basically, this is the final piece of our computer upgrade. When we first started this a few years ago, we realized all of our systems were on Windows 7, which was not supported anymore. Going forward, which can leave you open to cyber threats, et cetera, if the patches aren't followed that don't exist anymore. So we had misplaced the fact that these were still Windows 7. Going forward, the next time the fleet is rotated, we will start making these part of that project as well, so we never have to worry about this again. Same with cages. It's just equipment that should have been going with the patrol cars, but in an effort to cut costs, to try and extend them as long as we could, we just went too far, and we can't continue to operate like this. The Windows 7 is not wanting to play very well. If we upgrade them, it may not do either, and these are the in-car camera. You got to have these things working. So local option sales tax will fund the core of it, as it would the vehicles, the cages, anything else. We have ability to do it, but that is why it's before you today. We thought we could make it till next year, and they simply cannot. So
I always believe that having the right tools and appropriate pay keeps people happy, right? Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Carla?
Rathe.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Beaufore.
Yes.
Birgen.
Yes.
Drenkow.
Yes.
Glaser.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
The vote is 7-0. 20-16 is approved. Item 4, Resolution 20-17, A resolution approving a farm lease agreement between the City of Waverly and Dean Knapp for 120 acres of parcels M, N, and O located at the former Champions Ridge site.
I'll move approval of Resolution 20-17, approving a farm lease agreement between the City of Waverly and Dean Knapp for 120 acres of parcels M, N, and O located at the former Champions Ridge site for the total rent of $34,800.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, Carla.
Schneider.
Yes.
Beaufore.
Yes.
Birgen.
Yes.
Drenkow.
Yes.
Glaser.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Rathe.
Yes.
On a vote of 7-0, Resolution 20-17 is approved. Item number 5 is a second reading of Ordinance 1070, an ordinance providing for rezoning of property owned by JDM Property Holdings, LLC, located at 208 9th Avenue Northwest and 1005 Adams Parkway from R2, 1 and 2 Family Residential, to PD Planned Development District.
I'll move approval of second reading of Ordinance 1070, an ordinance providing for the rezoning of property owned by JDM Property Holdings, LLC, located at 208 9th Avenue Northwest and 1005 Adams Parkway from R2, 1 and 2 Family Residential, to PD Planned Development District.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, Carla.
Beaufore.
Yes.
Bergen.
Yes.
Drenkow.
Yes.
Glaser.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Rathe.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
On a vote of 7-0, Ordinance 1070 is hereby approved. Resolution 20-18 is item number 6, a resolution fixing date for a meeting on the proposition of the issuance of not to exceed $700,000 in general obligation bonds of the City of Waverly, State of Iowa, for general corporate purposes, and providing for publication of notice thereof.
I will move approval of Resolution 20-18, fixing a date for a meeting on the proposition of the issuance of not to exceed $700,000 general obligation bonds of the City of Waverly, State of Iowa, for general corporate purposes as March 2nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers as the date, time, and place for public hearing, and providing for publication of notice thereof.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion here?
This portion would be for the ball fields. They're one of the general corporate purposes. It cannot be just done as needed by the city. There has to be a limitation. And because of our size, we're between 5 and 75,000. That's the range. It's 384.25B. That's what makes it 700,000. So straight out of the code.
Okay. And again, this is just fixing the date.
Yep.
And it's not to exceed amount. So
Correct.
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 That's the cap on that, anyway.
That's the difference. And the other one, when you have cost issues, we won't get too deep in this, we can do that in a minute. You have to pay for your bond attorneys, Moody's to rate you, the issuance costs, et cetera, underwriters discounts, disclosure costs, OS statement processing. All that stuff's got to be done as well. It's going to cost about $100,000. That's what it takes to issue bonds. You can't put that on any general corporate. That's why it's on the other one. You cannot do it on general corporate. And the amount is what the amount is, and that's, again, just another quirkiness in the law. So that's why it's 700 and 700, and that's it.
100% cost here.
That's it. The other will absorb the other fees associated with that and everything else. That's in the next one you're looking at.
Okay. Any other discussion? Otherwise, hearing none, roll call vote, Carla.
Bergen.
Yes.
Drenkow.
Yes.
Glaser.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
Rathe.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Beaufore.
Yes.
The vote is 7-0. Resolution 20-18 is approved. Item number 7, Resolution 20-19, a resolution fixing date for a meeting on the proposition of the issuance of not to exceed $5,500,000 of general obligation bonds of the City of Waverly, State of Iowa, for essential corporate purposes and providing publication of notice thereof.
I'll move approval of Resolution 20-19, fixing date for a meeting on the proposition of the issuance of not to exceed $5,500,000 general obligation bonds of the City of Waverly, State of Iowa, for essential corporate purposes as March 2nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers as the date, time, and place for public hearing and providing for publication of notice thereof.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion?
This is everything else. So
Perfect.
we've got some bids in on 4th Street today. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about it just a hair more, but at least we know. And it's still within our range. This has cushion in it just in case weird stuff can happen, but we would not issue that full $5.5 million. It would be a little bit less than that going forward.
What is the rate now?
What's that?
What kind of rate are we paying at the moment?
For which bond?
This one, just as an example.
I haven't been sold yet, so I don't know.
What was the rate we paid last year on the general obligation corporate?
211, something like that, or might even been below that. I want to say it is right on 2.
Okay.
I broke 2, so.
That was probably your question, essentially. All right, any other discussion? Otherwise, we'll call a roll call vote with Carla.
Drenkow?
Yes.
Glaser?
Yes.
Kangas?
Yes.
Rathe?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
Beaufore?
Yes.
Birgen?
Yes.
On a vote of 7-0, Resolution 20-19 is approved. Item number 8, review of the 2020-21 proposed budget.
Yeah.
Sir.
You know the drill. Until we rank these again. Take me a second to fire this up, sir.
Now, for effectiveness of tabulating, please, 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 everybody participate to the fullest. Please.
Same procedure, I take.
Do we get more than 5 minutes this time? I'm kidding.
I know.
Take 6, whatever you want.
Oh, so you added one.
I know, yeah.
We did. Yeah.
So, based on the discussion last time, there's a lot of.
Can you move the microphone down? Thanks. He will in just a moment.
Hold your horses, Derek. So based on discussion last time, we had a lot of talk about the Green Bridge or the 3rd Street Southeast Bridge or the Harmon Bridge or the Silver Bridge, whichever genre you want to call it. Should we do something in general? Do we have to fix it? Should we remove it? So that being the case, we decided to put on there, what if you just removed it for now? Now, if you want a traffic bridge, removing it, not doing any more for a little while would cost us our $1 million grant from the state, which we are basically locked for. But if you want to do a smaller version, a single lane, which we have talked about, was there a possible pedestrian, et cetera, you would not need that grant because it wouldn't be eligible anyway. So if you wanted to remove it only, you could do something later. If you want to do the traffic bridge itself, we should not remove it and sit. You really have to replace this thing as we go through, or it will be most likely not be eligible.
Question on that, James.
Yeah.
If council decides to not put a bridge there, so we got that $1 million hanging out there, can we ask the DOT to keep the Bremer Avenue Bridge open with that $1 million during construction?
Well, you could ask them anything you want, whether they'll do it or not, I don't know. I think there's discussion about looking at that option and seeing what kind of time frame it might take, additional time, cost. They're going to entertain that just because of what it is, but as far as asking to use that funding, because it's from a different source, I don't know if they would. I mean, you certainly request it, see if they would do that. But I do think they're going to entertain the possibility of what it could cost, additional time. What would that look like?
I just think no matter if we had a bridge there or not, that keeping that open that's a concern.
Well, my understanding is that when they're going to replace the Bremer Avenue Bridge, they're going to replace it down to the pilings. They're not planning on keeping parts of it open.
No.
They're going to remove
But you can do bridge construction 2 and 2.
Well, but I think, maybe I don't understand how the Bremer Avenue Bridge is constructed, but I think the pilings support the entire bridge and not just half of the bridge. Not just the north half or the south half. I mean, I don't know.
You could leave the west half open and then close the east half.
Well,
go really fast.
And make it take twice as long.
Well,
so my-
you can shift the angle, the alignment. It's easier if you can shift it, but this has to line up with the highway the way it is.
Right.
It is the difficulty.
As I understand, and perhaps Mike, you have an opinion on this, the engineering-wise, it can technically be done, but of course, we've sent a man to the moon. The DOT probably doesn't have the kind of spare money to really go crazy.
My impression would be keeping the bridge open while we do construction would probably increase the cost by more than $1 million.
Yeah. And I'll offer
it's hard
this.
to say.
You count on that option and 3 days into demolition,
Surprise.
we can't do this.
Yep.
Then what are you up against?
Some parts, they have to build more than half to be able to have traffic control, et cetera. I mean, it's not a simple, just like the Adams Parkway Bridge, we did that, reconstructed the deck on that. Same situation. It probably could have been done, but you're talking about truck traffic and everything, and how do you do that with a third of the bridge or 40% of it there when the other half has to be worked on, and then you've got safety issues and traffic. It's a little tougher, but I know they're going to entertain the possibility of it from the sound
So
of it.
can I ask a question about the 3rd Street? So you added that on as a separate, is that a separate project of just taking the bridge out and not
Yes.
replacing it?
Yes.
Not as part of taking the bridge out as part of making a new bridge?
Nope.
So
If you want a
separate
traffic
project.
bridge, I would not put that out there, because that is basically just doing something right now to get it taken out, doing something later, and it would not be a 2-lane traffic bridge. We'll forfeit $1 million.
So if we don't like that option, should we not rank it or rank it
Just
8?
rank it last.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you how to
Okay,
do it, but
just
that would
wanted to
be,
make sure I did the homework correctly.
that would be a good thing.
It's important to understand that you can go with that option and still in the future put a 2-lane in 5 years out, but you're going to be on the foot for the whole bill. You're not going to have $1 million from the DOT to offset it. Even if you decide take it out this year and start construction in 2 years, that's gone.
Yep, absolutely.
That's going to be devastating. So the town's going to have to work together to get business down there, because that's not good.
So we alluded to earlier, we do have bids in on 4th. At least we're hoping to bring those to you soon. It was a little higher than we anticipated. So it's going to put that to a 0.59. If you see on your list, instead of 0.57 as it was before, it's 2.95 million. That's the most we could put in there and still have a capacity correction. But in the big scheme of it, it didn't change it that much. It's a few $100,000 total on $6 million, but I want to be aware it was slightly higher. And then our sewer and water off take a little bit of hit on that too, just to balance that out. But when you look at the overall cost, it was a few percentage points. It wasn't like it was drastically over budget by any means. It was just, when it's that big, it does not take that much, because that's just our share. The overall project's pushing $5 million for that total corridor for 4th Street. So our portion will be 60% roughly of that. So that's what you have in front of you there.
We hand these in, or?
Yeah, you can pass them down to Bill.
Okay.
I'll tabulate them. But I'm going to turn this off while I do tabulate them. Because why would I not want to keep it very dramatic? It's what we do. I can come and collect them too.
You're okay.
What makes you guys trace it down?
I need to stand up.
Thank you both. So you can talk amongst yourselves for anything else budget you want to talk to quick. It won't take long to put these in.
A little bit longer than last time.
We'll be a little longer. Do you want to take a 5-minute recess, sir? I don't have a bit longer yet tonight. I mean, I'll do this as quick as I can. I'm just, for you guys to have to sit there and watch me type, I don't know if that's really entertaining for you.
Well, as long as we maintain the quorum up here, I think we're fine to sit and wait.
Good.
What's the difference?
I agree. There.
Should run my commentary in.
I was just thinking, I brought my box of cookies over there.
So you see any good movies or anything?
Back to the Princess Pizzeria in Iowa Falls.
Was it good? That's what I want to know.
I didn't take a picture. I'm not, I try to veer away from that, but the Royal Cheeseburger with Canadian bacon.
Not funny, Cherry. Chief. I always assume there's an instigator in there.
What did I miss?
We'll discuss that tomorrow.
Canadian bacon, say it again. Sauteed mushrooms and mozzarella cheese was pretty dynamite.
It's sounding really
From the East Bremer Diner for a run for their money, but it was kind of an eclectic place. I'll give you a little dissertation on that while you work on that. I wish I had the picture because it said it was a sweet shop, a soda fountain. They had steaks, chops, and pizza. I'm thinking, this is the new era Shakey's, you know. But walk in, and yeah, they have this really long soda fountain and a lot of our old stuff. They had silver sets from the 1930s in a display case, and just a really neat place to go into. Yeah. Yeah, you were from there, yeah.
In Iowa Falls for 8 years,
Yeah.
8.5 years, so Princess is a neat place.
Have you had the Royal Cheeseburger? Okay.
Had good pizza back in the late 60s and early 70s.
Okay.
all right. I think I'm up there. Set my tally. Okay, I think we're good enough. Make sure this pops back. Coming. There it is. So, if you look, let me shorten this up here a little bit. Ball Diamond project still is your top project. Then it'd be 4th Street, trail extension, the actual bridge project itself, then removal of the bridge, Cedar Lane, first phase northwest, and then Public Works, which is a year out as well. But that is how it looks. So you can see it really is not any different than the prior and the first 4. The next 3 be, with the others are kind of shuffled a little bit, but really not by much.
A big drop shows we got some kind of consensus there at the top. That's good to see.
Absolutely. So it's fairly tight, and then it gets a little bit in the middle, and then it drops out. So
We'll have to throw chairs over the bridge.
that's what you're looking at. So in our goal tonight, so you're aware also, the main thing that we have to accomplish is we need to set what's called the pre-levy hearing amount. And the pre-levy, we explained it last time, allows you to make a bond payment in the year you're budgeting, not having to wait another year to make that payment. So it's a faster, more accelerated payoff of your debt. That amount can be whatever you want to set it to be. We try to do something reasonable, like approximately 10%, 10 years, of what you're going to borrow. So if we're borrowing $6 million, we want a $600,000 payment. That's what we factor into the debt itself. Regardless of if you borrow no debt or borrow $1 million or $2 million or $5 million, what you set that first payment is the first payment, and you will pay that first payment. Afterwards, it can get a whole lot smaller, a little bit bigger, whatever it may be. But that's the thing about it. Even if you don't borrow any debt, you still have that money coming in, it'll be taxed for, and then you have to decide what would you do with it. But I'm pretty sure we're going to borrow something, and it's probably going to be more than $500,000-$600,000. So it will not be an issue, but that is what we're needing to do, is set that first payment based on what the totals are. We can talk about what a reasonable payment would be, then the attorneys get it ready, and on the 2nd of March, you would have the pre-levy hearing, which is what establishes that. So that is my ultimate goal tonight. If there's anything else budget-related you want to do or discussion-wise, we can certainly do that, but the ultimate for me is to get that number figured out so we can keep this moving along and still be in compliance with a March 16 hearing overall and a March 2nd pre-levy hearing.
So if I look at the top 4 there, and if the council decided to go with the 2-year project on the bridge, does that necessarily mean that it would be a 2-year project? Because obviously phase 1 is removal. Does that give us another year to talk about what to do with the bridge.
Well, it's removal and it's also some construction built into there because we have a few $100,000, I believe, in engineering.
Would that have to be done in phase one?
Or you'd have to push it all off into phase two, which just, again, pushes the cost off a little further. So about $200,000 in engineering, you have $700,000 in actual construction starting to occur. You could push it off to July 1st, then it makes it well, let's just take a look.
I don't think we have the capacity in that.
I think you're right, Mayor. We'll take a quick peek here and see.
I believe that if we separate the removal and the construction into two different projects, then we're not available for that $1 million grant.
As long as we're going to replace it and go forward with it, we would be. We just wouldn't be able to hold out with doing it in a year or so later.
Right.
But let's take a quick peek here. So there's your $200,000 for engineering. Let's say we got to do that. So that would make this $3 million. Add that 700 on it, and you can do a drum roll if you want. It's not that exciting. Nope, we're not quite there. You can still do that. We just have to push off a little bit of something else. The only thing left, because we already would have started First Street Northwest Recon, would be Public Works, but we'd already have started that too. This is the borrowed money, not the money we've allocated from water, sewer, solid waste, et cetera. So it doesn't fit. I mean, we could borrow a little more that first year and have it carry over. You could put that into, say, $300,000. We'll see if that does it. And then we take this down to 2.9. And again, it sometimes matters, sometimes it doesn't. Come on. Still doesn't matter. So it's going to take a bit more to do that because you still have the second year payment result out there, so it takes a bit to move that out.
Yeah.
So that's why we have it as we did, is what we could fit in for it. So.
And then just one to clarify to help me, I think I know how you did this, but on your levy increases projected out the next 4 years,
right.
What kind of assumptions did you make on, I guess everything else to get those? Were you just kind of using?
I use basically flat valuations because there's times when they go down, and depending on the rollbacks, I don't want to assume that'll be there and won't. And that is assuming the debt has not fallen off from prior years. So I know we'll have some debt falling off next year, so that 0.94 is probably very high compared to what it might be, which might be half that.
And then in terms of expenses, what were we using in terms of payroll?
I don't. This is pure debt.
Okay.
I don't look at other expenses. This is all just what hits the levy as a whole. Expenses themselves will be above and beyond anything else additional. Because we have.
But that could affect that, right? I mean, if for what healthcare went up to 100% next year.
That can affect the levy rate. That was the thing that we approved. But in terms of the debt capacity, we don't tend to finance like police operations or sewer. That are,
This is just project work. So it'd go up 0.94 regardless of what the other expenses are. This is based on valuations and levy.
This is what we're selling bonds for.
Yep. This is all debt.
Right.
So even if you have a huge increase in expenditures, if you're still borrowing this amount, it's still going to go up that on the debt levy itself. Debt levy being separated from anything else because we have a limit. Well, the 810 levy, all you can spend is $8.10 per thousand across the valuation. Can't do any more than that. We have a few other levies that can do what needs to be done, whether it's civic center, insurance, benefits. But then there's debt, and that's it. You can't really exceed those levy amounts. So regardless of expenditures, we can only expend, other than insurance and other smaller funds, 810, and that's it. When you're capped, you're capped. And there's many times I've seen cities when they struggle have to cut things out just to make down to their 810 levy. And that's a tough place to be, but it hasn't been that long ago when larger cities around us were struggling with that. We've not had that issue so far.
I think what's important to realize here, even though these levy increases down here, 21 through 24, are fairly substantial, and they're not pleasant to look at. But as James has, informed me a couple times, and I've heard it several times, that getting us into a position where we have some equalization in the future, this is part of growth. The facts are the facts that, not doing something with the Green Bridge for multiple years, now we're faced with having to make that decision. some of the other things out there too. You know, you look down there and it's not a bonded issue, but removal of the WPC dome, you know, that other than the fact that it provided some storage and stuff, that could have been done years ago. A lot of different things, but that's not, I don't want to beat that any more than that, because there are people that sit around the dais that were part of that, and I want to be respectful in the latter years. So I think the efforts here, even though the levy is, you know, slated on there, if it was to go through over the next 4 budget years to go up, there is a purpose behind it. If you do these projects, that on this schedule, your debt payment schedule here, to protect the net worth of the community, the city, that's the route that you almost have to go.
And some of that, again, when you look at it, as I said, fiscal 22 may be half that. We do have a $250,000 in debt, I believe is taxable, that's popping off. That would offset a lot of that as well.
Right.
If we have proceeds left from any of these other projects, we'll buy the debt down with that to get eliminate as fast as we can that debt. We did that this year with our bond premium. They gave us free money. We didn't do anything else with it but pay back debt with it. We did not want to start something else. Fiscal 23, part of that is Memorial Park. We may or may not be able to do that at that time. $1 million, that is that prep and demolition, and what's that look like? A lot of that depends on where the fair is. Are they able to truly move then, or do they need another year? That determines that. And then Cedar Lane, we've talked about, do we get it done ahead of that? Do we do it after? That's another decision you'll make at the time. But it goes back to one of the first times we talked about this. If it wasn't for this bridge getting replaced, half this wouldn't be getting discussed. We wouldn't even be worried about most of this. Right. That's really what's driving a lot of these decisions. You're in a spot where you didn't ask to be put here. No more than when we had the timing for Bremer Avenue to come through. It wasn't our doing.
Right.
We knew it was coming, but we didn't get to choose, do it this year. We're not getting to choose, replace that bridge in 2 or 3 more years. There are outside forces that we now have to deal with, in a sense, and these are the decisions that come with doing that. And it's not pretty. Nobody's happy about it. The levy increase could be worse. It could have been on a year where the roll tax went up, and then you got taxes galore going through the roof. They're still going up possibly here, but we've talked about what they are roughly per month for a couple $100,000 now a house. I mean, we have all that out here. So my question is, what do we want to do?
And I think it's also important to realize that, looking at Memorial Park 1 and 2, that's a part of that commitment. Looking into the future, I know it's not being part of this bond schedule this year, but that's part of that commitment to adult, softball is enhancing, making better, refurbishing their homes. So we got to get to that. And again, if this bridge wasn't an issue,
Well, the bridge would be an issue at some year, right?
Some year
It's 70 years old, or
we just would like to have some of this not be compounded on each other when we were doing it.
75 years old. So, if it wasn't this year, it would be some other year that a different council would be grappling with it. I think it comes back to conversations we had on that second Saturday of none of these projects are non-essential. They all need to be done at some point, and it didn't sound like pushing them forward was going to save us any money. No. And it's not possible with our debt capacity in some situations, depending on how you move the magic board. But, I think about what Chris said during the discussion about the streetscapes. It's how much, for me, it boils down to how much per month, as best we can estimate that for a given property owner. And as I recall, when we talked about it on that Saturday, now it's a little higher now that the bid came in a little bit higher on 4th Street, but not too much.
If you use like a $590,000 payment, which to me, if we're doing this, we're at, say, you don't chop anything out here, and by God, you certainly can. Mm-hmm. We're just under $5.9 million, so $590,000, 1/10 of it. Very positive payment to use that, retire the debt quicker. It moves. Let's see if I've got that document as well.
Because I think you said, I wrote down from our discussion, a $200,000 house, it's about $7.42 a month.
See, we calculate a lot of this out, about 7 different ways we calculate this out. On a $200,000 house, it's $770 for your residential, which is 70% of our value. That's what it is for 200,000. For 300, it's 1155. For 100, it's 385. And that, what that is, you go into the debt levy, this is how much we're borrowing debt total. We add in a $590,000 payment, and it spits it out. Again, we're capped at 810. These are the other levies we're using, then debt levies there, and then there's your 100% valuation, your rollbacks. This document I've used for 15 years. And actually, the county used it before I was there for a lot longer than that. You can thank Grant Peter for this brilliant man in Blackhawk County. That was his document, and I loved it. It was really clear in what it did for us, for all classes of property. And we focus mostly on residential here because that is the bulk of it. So that's how we calculate it. You say how much is it per 100,000, that's how we calculate it compared to last year with the rollbacks in, it's pure debt levy versus some other levies with cap.
Well, and to get on to the idea of where you're picking and choosing and how things, Burger King to Dairy Queen has been on as a project for at least as long as I've been on council.
Maybe
It's
not
been
as
up
long
there
as Cedar
for
Lane.
98. Yeah, and Cedar Lane's been on there as well. So these are all ones when we talk about decisions previous councils have had to make to try to stay within this, and when, where there was doing the dam and some of the flood reconstruction that we had to do, we had to make decisions and push some things back.
Right.
Other things.
Look at your other projects. How long has the Third Street Bridge been talked about? Recommended study after study of study. Ball diamonds, but property purchased almost 20 years ago for the same thing. These are not recent events. These are all about 20 years of looking at them, not having them go through for one reason or another. Now you're stuck with the issue we have. Something's got to give, and this is where you unfortunately sit. Welcome to City Council.
It's an opportunity to clear the board on a lot of things or start that process.
It is.
There's a price.
I'm looking forward to getting a lot of these things done.
Finally.
I mean, I've heard lots of people, lots of different opinions, for example, on the Green Bridge. Replace it, remove it, bicycle, pedestrian. But everyone agrees, make a decision, get it done so we can stop talking about it.
Yeah, you may have seen my post out there, the image of the 2003 task force, and at the bottom, the do nothing was not an option. And my articulation is that's not an option today either, in my opinion.
I agree.
To continue to do nothing. It has a price.
I mean, no one disagrees that should go. And plowing forward on consensus is a no-brainer.
Definitely need access in that 3rd Street across that river. So, whether it's 1 lane, 2 lane, and I've heard a lot of people say that they don't just want a walking bridge. So, and then do they really want a 2-lane bridge and all of that traffic that will come with a 2-lane bridge? So, but definitely I think that we need access there with the sooner than later. I mean, we need to move with that, I think. So
the discussion here really is, are we going to move forward with doing something? That's what the question is right now.
Yeah.
What we do with it is the next step. So we're not making a decision on what that plan is. It can be just a removal. It can be a pedestrian only. It can be a 1 lane. It can be a 2 lane. But we're deciding in the budget to allow us to do any of those options. In the end, it could be a pedestrian bridge if that's what this council decides.
Could I get an engineering perspective on what Third Street condition is there? I know we have it here. We talked briefly the other week about that thing.
The condition of the road, or
the need to reconstruct it.
The need to reconstruct it, kind of the timeline and delay.
Well, he's getting queued up. James, will you slide that over to that 3rd Street and highlight that column, please? There you go. Thank you.
Because I think this is a critical part of 1 and 2, phase 1 and 2. This is phase 3, really, right? Phase 3 of the bridge is the 3rd Street Southeast.
3rd Street Southeast is classified as a collector street, always has been for many, many decades. Certainly the truss bridge has restricted the type and size of vehicles that are going to be using that corridor on a regular basis. In 1998, a project was completed that replaced the curb and gutter and basically did a bit of a mill and resurfacing on it. So the asphaltic pavement that is there is only about 2 inches thick, 2 to 3 inches. Now, the base underneath is probably sand because it's in the floodplain, so that's good. But a few years ago, we seal coated the surface. This was after the bridge had been closed in 2015. But if you go to Google Street Map, you'll see the condition of the pavement and the state of the deterioration before we seal coated it. And seal coating is good for maintaining residential streets. We do seal coat some of our collector streets that have thicker pavement, but I anticipate that you take a 22-year-old pavement and open it up to more traffic, because I think one of the intents here is that this is going to serve as a local detour when the Bremer Avenue Bridge is being worked on. So you're not going to see semi-trailers. If they are, they're probably lost.
They'll never
using it. But they're not going to want to be down there trying to navigate those tight corners. But are you going to see panel trucks? Are you going to see garbage trucks? Are you going to see Waverly utility trucks using it? Absolutely. Are you going to see the occasional ready mix truck and dump truck? Absolutely. I don't anticipate that the pavement is going to survive very much longer. So if you can replace the bridge, open it up to a new level of traffic, you're probably going to be faced with a situation where you're going to have to plan on replacing the pavement probably after the Bremer Avenue Bridge is done. So if you're going to replace the pavement, what do you have underneath? You've got 100-year-old water main, probably 100-year-old sanitary sewer main. And so utilizing cost estimates that we had for doing similar type of work on 4th Street and 10th Street, we're coming up with a cost estimate. Now this is not today's, we're projecting some inflation in there. We get about 3-4 years out, we're at $3.1 million.
And if there was a PED or no traffic there, how long?
Then we would continue to maintain it basically as a residential street. And we would not be programming to replace it.
And you could push off a rebuild like that for how long if it wasn't turned into an arterial?
Well, we have to indefinitely because we're not rebuilding residential streets.
Okay.
So
Collector Street's a different story. We've done a lot of those with residential. We're struggling.
Just in classification, you're determining that?
Well, we have to maintain our higher volume streets. So those are, typically our collector streets.
So Mike, the reconstruction of that street is replacement of the infrastructure below the pavement sort of a bonus of reconstructing the street, or does it need replacing? I presume it's 100 and however many years old.
Right. But if we're going to be opening it up, again, if the pavement is going to need to be replaced, it's probably going to be a project more similar to 10th Street, which is also a collector street over by Meyer Pharmacy. So if we're going to go to that expense and replacing the pavement so it can support, more frequent traffic like, the panel trucks, the garbage trucks, the utility trucks, and stuff like that. We know it's a 4-inch water main underneath 3rd Street. That would be replaced with an 8-inch, which would have some benefits to the neighborhood as well. But again, I think if you're voting to replace the bridge, I think you're also committing yourself that you may have to replace the pavement in the roadway probably in 2025.
That's my challenge, this $6 million bridge all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think, the Third Street Bridge is, of course, this has been discussed for almost 20 years, and the task force was, I think, very thorough and recommended a 2-lane vehicular bridge. There are certainly concerns from the people on that street about making sure that people drive the speed limit, and concerns about pedestrians and kids trying to get to Southeast School, so nobody wants anybody to get run over. So I can understand their concerns, but as Brian said 1 or 2 weeks ago, if you go a block east or west, a lot of people want a bridge there, and they miss that. And so I personally, I've heard comments mainly in favor of a vehicular bridge there. The people that I've talked to who are hesitant, don't want a bridge at all, or prefer a pedestrian or a 1-lane bridge, live right in that neighborhood. And but I think it's going to serve as a detour, not just for the southeast quadrant of Waverly, but northeast for sure, and then as an access point to downtown. So I personally think that we need to go forward that. And it's not an appetizing number to look at, the tax levy, but I also don't think we're going to get anywhere by postponing anything. So,
James, I do have a question. So when we looked at those rankings of the projects,
Yes.
one of the projects that was fairly low is at First Street Northwest construction.
Right.
But if we look at the budget that is still in the budget,
Yeah, it was 100,000 upfront, so 2 cents. If you want to continue, it would just be in fiscal. So again, the impact was negligible because it was just engineering it. The second phase of $500,000 to finish it then was the bigger piece in the second year.
Right.
So that's what makes it hard to do some of this. Just like we show the 0.64 for the bridge, well, it's really only 18 cents in the first year. The big chunk is in the second year, actually, most of it's construction.
But it also looks like that's not something we could, say, put off a year, because then we'd run into other problems. Well, we'd run into problems because of the Bramer Avenue bridge being out, that we probably couldn't be working on that First Street Northwest.
That's where it all kind of fell down. It was one of those, you had to do around it either.
Right, you can either put it off 1 year or put it off 4 years, it's your choice.
And since that's got federal money tied to it, we thought we'd get it done first.
So that's why it's next year, even though it seemed to be a lower priority, we're putting it in next year because it actually fits there.
At least the 100,000 for engineering. That piece can at least get done. Then if you want to push it off, you have the engineering, but it'd be a similar issue. The money sitting there from the feds, matching funds. We try to utilize other people's money all we can.
I'm a big fan of that.
So especially if it's the federal government, I'll take all day from that.
I want to piggyback off what Ann was talking about as far as the neighborhood and what what's presumed is needed or not needed in that neighborhood, and also what Brian had talked about. I put together just some basic information here. The first sheet here, you'll see down just a smidge. Yep. So just looking at Google Maps and putting out, this is not an opening a response time. This is just distance for anybody traveling and just using some waypoints. Fire station, hospital, and police department to get to those listed areas. Obviously, the police department's going the other way across the river during the bridge closure. So currently, with the bridge open, you have that distance in that first column there. Looking at using Cedar Lane, the ones that are highlighted there indicate the shortest route to get between point A and point B, and then Cedar River Parkway. So the ones that are highlighted would probably be the preferred method of getting from point A to point B with those listed there. The second sheet now shows with having an alternate route of the Green Bridge in play. As you can see, when we previously had the police department, Cedar Lane was a very popular route to get to every single one of those destinations. Now it's the Green Bridge. We only have 2 locations that getting from the hospital, ambulance response. There's only 2 places. So the Green Bridge is a huge factor when we look at emergency access. It would be a preferred route to benefit having that bridge in place. However, go to the third page, which is basically just like this last one. when we talk about the civilian aspect of, okay, this is after all construction is done, and now we have all 3 locations available or crosses of the Green Bridge, the Cedar River Parkway, and Cedar Lane, it still currently shows that the current routes that we use today outweigh using the Green Bridge outside of going from basically the police department to Walmart and Burger King. So in respect for the neighborhood, it just using just these few, and they were completely random, was to articulate that people are going to go out of their way to use the Green Bridge. It's not going to actually be a distance savings to go through the residential neighborhood to get from point A to point B. In most cases, as we can clearly see, and even Walmart and Burger King was a tie. So why would you drive through a residential neighborhood with risks of children and, backing out of driveways, those types of things? So, the biggest inconvenience is construction time for when that bridge is open and this one is closed. So.
Mike, do you think it'll be, is it fair to say 1 year construction season should be ample to get that bridge in?
You're talking about the 3rd Street Bridge?
3rd Street Bridge, not 3rd Street, but the Bremer Avenue.
Yeah.
The Bremer Avenue
How long
Bridge.
would it be down? Is it one construction season be enough, or are we gonna push into 2? I know you put you on the spot, but.
Well, I can't schedule the DOT's project for them. I can schedule the 3rd Street project.
Sure.
And that's probably a 12-month project.
Okay.
And again, what I'd advocate for, but, WHKS would be, or whoever the design firm is, would very much be a part of this, but I think the contractor would want to get in there and build the cofferdam and do the work down below when the river levels are most predictable, and that's going to be starting probably in September. Now, that's no guarantee. But historically, that's when you have the most predictable water levels is then. So you remove the bridge, do your pilings, your piling caps, piers, pier caps, get the bridge beams up before the spring thaw, and then you're working up above. So it's still a 12-month process, but the idea would be that maybe you start work in September and try to get wrapped up by July or August of the following year. I think that's the schedule that maybe we had laid out.
I believe it was just a year now that we're working on.
Is there anything on the Bremer Avenue Bridge that we might be responsible for, like we were with the Bremer Avenue itself?
I kept that email. They said it's all state federal. We would have no local, unless we want to get fancy with it, put in different things to light it and all this. That's on us. Standard bridge going back in, that's all fed and state. That's not us.
I remember with the Green Bridge, there's some, Waverly Utilities has some conduits across with that. We don't have anything like that on Bremer Avenue Bridge. That's going to be a cost to us. Or to Waverly Utilities?
No, we don't, but
American does.
Another utility that does, and they wreaked havoc on the Bremer Avenue project, so.
Yeah, they did. It was a timing nightmare.
Again,
But that's a state, becomes more of a state issue.
Absolutely.
They tend to listen to the state and the feds a little more than they do us. They kind of get moving a little quicker, so it shouldn't be as much a problem.
We've asked for a seat at the table as soon as possible when they finally get to a point where they've kind of identified who their design firm is going to be, and we want to certainly be involved in the discussions, whether it's the scheduling or whether it's enhancements. I know at the very least there's a big desire to light up the dam again and have LED floodlights mounted on the other side of the bridge so that we can illuminate the dam like it had been prior to the 2008 flood. The dilemma that we have with the old lighting system is the only way to get to it was using a snooper truck to get underneath, and so with the construction of the new bridge, we want to have the ability to access those lights for maintenance purposes from the bridge deck. So those are some subtle things. I know there's some work over maybe by Fort Queen, so we want to look at it a little bit differently. But
So that piece would be ours, but the standard bridge itself is all state and federal funding, so it's not us.
I mean, hopefully that there's some low-cost aesthetic things that we can do that would really make it kind of a signature bridge.
So what exactly do you need from us tonight?
I kind of need an idea where you want to head, and more so, I just need a dollar amount for your pre-levy so that you have a reasonable payment in that first year, which locks you in for no matter what you do, that first payment. So worst case, if you did everything, that's why I had the $590 in there, that's your worst case payment in my opinion. If you want something less than that, we can do that. If you do go ahead with everything, then you're kind of backloading that bond a little bit, which isn't terrible, but it makes things going forward just a touch harder because you put more debt going forward versus knocking out as much today. But again, it's just consensus in a sense of where do you want to see that first payment? And some of that's dependent on what do you think you might be ended up doing here. They don't have to be linked, but that's kind of how you judge one to the other.
I think you have to go back to that other sheet of rankings and kind of incorporate that. So that 3rd Street on number 39 crossed.
Yep.
Year one, what is that dollar figure?
$900,000.
Okay.
About 18 cents. Let me change that, sir.
Temporarily, that'd be. And then if you take those top, and take those top 4 items and kind of figure what that.
0.93.
And then the total sum there
Dollar
is
amount would be
4.6
million, 466.
And that wouldn't lock us into not doing the bridge. It would just get it moving to get it out of there.
It makes doing something available,
Yeah.
doing any of the options that are available to us remains available.
Obviously, I didn't get an incomplete tonight, so I appreciate that, James.
I appreciate
We all do.
I really want to vote yes for this budget when it comes time. And, my only thing on this is that we move forward over the next year and do some reasonable exercises to make sure. I said the word waste, and as soon as I said it, I knew I was going to spend the rest of the meeting defending that word because it wasn't the word that I wanted to say. But that we look for the best possible allocations for capital. That's a more pleasant way to put that. And that we exercise discipline in purchasing. It doesn't mean we don't purchase things. It just makes sure that we, really take our vendors to task.
So we better throw it on there.
Yeah.
OT payment, you have no choice. We have to really do that one. So that really brings it to 5.7. So the thing we're missing is $100,000 for engineering for First Street.
And that 22 cents on there, right?
Yeah, it doesn't want to play ball here.
Yeah.
Hang on here.
So 115.
Right in there. Like I said, we're missing the 2 cents on the engineering for the First Street Southwest. So, and also, if we were going to do it, I'd put the 2 cents on and just do the project. I mean, if that's what we're really looking at, these 4, and that's where you draw the line, but we still have the payment, that's the outlying as well, then it really is everything except for that 2 cents for the First Street Northwest, which is federal money. So I mean, put this puzzle together 1,000 times, and yet it still looks the same. There's not much we can do with it.
So that First Street, you said is federal money?
Matching funds, I believe, is it not, Mike? On First Street Northwest reconstruction, there's a federal matching money in there.
Yeah, state swap money.
State swap. Came from the feds, the state swaps it for ours and gives us that money through, so there is a 50-50.
So we're still paying it?
Yeah, we're paying half. They're paying half.
So when you put the shaded on the other diagram there with the rankings, are you taking out the Cedar Lane? They're saying just
That was actually further out anyway. That was another year or so out. So
That was just a possibility. If we didn't do one of the other ones,
if you
we
want to
could start
accelerate
that
that
one.
because of the bridge, you could do that. Ebb and flow, kind of just an option.
Yep.
Because like I said, what we gave you was a solution. It was not the solution. It was just a solution. So we'll never want to bring you something that's not going to work, and we start from scratch. So we pieced together what seemed to work, but you could have switched it around any way you wanted to. It was nothing to us to do that. It was just so you had something to look at.
Well, I appreciate your solution in the sense that it gets us moving on the 3rd Street Bridge.
Yeah, I mean, it fits. It's not pretty, but it fits.
So if I can preface this.
Yep.
DOT payment, Ball Diamond.
Yep.
4th Street, 10th Avenue Trail.
Yep.
First part of 3rd Street Southeast.
Correct.
And the 1st Street Northwest reconstruction.
The first part of that.
Yep, that 105,000.
Correct, the first phase. Gets us to 5.805 at 117.
Yep, that's 117, and total is 5,865.
865. Yeah, 65. I
5,865.
missed one.
That's the 590 payment I have plugged in already. As a nice 10% just in case, but
What was the levy amount on that?
117.
117.
that's the increase.
So what kind of conversation will we be having next year?
You'll be looking at, I mean, we can talk about that now. Next year, you'll have the second part of the Green Bridge going through, or sorry, 3rd Street Southeast. Some people get bent, they call it green still. 3rd Street Southeast Bridge, the biggest piece of that will be coming through. Because you kind of committed to doing that in a sense. You would have the rest of 1st Street Northwest at $500,000. And then you would have the second phase of Public Works, because the first phase we would start would be all the funding from the transfers in from water, sewer. We've been building that war chest to do this project. First year, second year would be power plant. So you're looking at also the final payment DOT. So you're looking at 4.7 million, but again, I think there's a bond falling off that would pretty much almost knock that out. I'd have to confirm that, but that 2.3 would kind of go away. So you're really looking at 2.4 million, and that's maybe half what the levy increase would be that we're predicting, because I want to confirm that one first. And again, it depends on valuation, et cetera, but we do have a bond falling off next year that would take a big chunk of that out if we are able to, and then we would be buying down debt as well. So it may not be quite that 9.4, it could be half that or less.
I was going to say it's calculated to 4.8.
Yeah.
So
that's, yeah.
Could you toggle back to the one with the totals again?
The right here?
Yeah, thank you.
James, is there any way that the upcoming census and the numbers we get back from there are going to affect these numbers?
Not really. I mean, when you look at the funding that is affected by road use tax, the biggest one, local option actually is. When I looked at that, we had a discussion. I wasn't 100% sure. That formula, 75% of that is based on population from what we receive as part of the overall pool that is allocated for the county. So we pull the largest portion of that. If we grow in population, we'll get more. Not substantial, but we'll still get more. But those are the few things that really affect.
So road use tax and lost.
And the lost is
a little bit.
Road use is a big one.
So I'm hearing levy rates across the state are.
Depends. Somebody
Fort Dodge was $5.
What's that?
Fort Dodge was $5. Was that right?
No.
I thought that was a $5.
They're at 22 and something on their levy.
Okay. I thought they just took on a $5 increase.
I'd say from what I've seen, there are cities that have grown quite a bit and their levies are dropping now a little bit. And there's some that are starting to grow and their levies are going up a lot. There's quite a few with $1 or more because they have a $2-3 million project they're not used to having. See, we're spoiled in that sense, and I say that respectfully. We have multiple projects going on all the time. Some of these cities might get one every 2-3 years. That's all they get. It's just not that kind of growth that's fostering this.
What I'd like to
many go up as go down.
Learn is, do we have more cities that are going up and down, and how much? Because that's going to, you could, I suppose, project construction costs coming down based on that.
We can get that from last year to this year, and we'd have it from next year, from this year to next year, but because that research is all out there. State has that, and we pull it every year. But so far what I'm seeing, there's a lot of them going up because of construction costs, construction projects. Some are going down. They're not doing any increase in projects this year, so it really kind of is how you ebb and flow. But a lot of them that are going up are cities that are growing, and some of them that are cities that are stagnant. And
benefit costs that are rising substantially, so that's factoring.
So yeah, everything costs more, and that's what we're seeing as well. And so it doesn't get any cheaper. That's all I can say. Construction does not get any cheaper. I don't know if you're talking a year from now, 5 years from now, it will not be cheaper than it is today, unfortunately.
I think that these things that we're doing or that you're talking about doing are more necessary than they are wanted, so.
Yeah, that said 20 years, most of these have been talked about. These are not things that just, let's just go ahead and put that bridge in next year. It's 20 years
As much as
wanting to do something.
Infrastructure person, this ball diamond project is necessary.
Yeah.
It's, I don't want to delve into the deepness of it, but it's a little bit different.
It's necessary for, being a destination place and having family and, yeah, I think it's necessary. So 4th Street, my mom said, I just drove down 4th Street today, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty
these are necessary.
If you look at, there's not many projects we've actually added streets. Parkway is probably the biggest one for obvious reasons, and we actually added a corridor. All this is upkeep, repair. I mean, it's not adding and adding subdivisions and streets and all this. It's really upkeep on almost all this. The only thing new is ball fields for various reasons, but the rest of this is all just replacement and upkeep. Core areas in the city, in a sense, from the bridge to 4th Street, et cetera. It just comes with the price tag. That's kind of where we come back to circle again. It's ugly. Nobody likes it. It's just we are stuck where we are.
Are we at a point where somebody wants to make a recommendation? Again, the all-in for the items that I listed earlier comes at 5.865 at 117.
Well, I don't think we're in a position for a motion, but I support the
No,
budget.
it's
So if
direction.
I go in with the 590 payment, because we have to get that levy set.
It's a direction. It's
Is
not
there
a
any
motion.
heartburn over that? Because, we have to do something.
Right.
Is 590 acceptable?
It is acceptable to me.
Okay. Well, you can't vote, obviously, but anyone else?
That's what I meant.
I wouldn't say
I know
there's any heartburn over it. There's plenty of heartburn. I think it's something we have to do.
It's
So
more
I
of a
would-
nausea thing for me, actually, but
Right. No, he's looking for direction. I wasn't looking for a motion,
I
but
appreciate it.
I do not see a better option.
Well, roll forward with it, and like I said, you can always backfill less, more, depending on how you come out on the 16th. That's a ways out, but we'll set that for March 2nd to have that hearing at the pre-levy of 590, and that'll just set the payment. So if you do a lot less, you take a bigger hunk out up front, which helps you going forward. But that seems reasonable.
My only Alka-Seltzer to the heartburn is what the contingencies that I've said, and I think, and my concern is not what I'm seeing here, but I think there's other factors that are going to push on households, and that concerns me.
Yep, so we agree. And the other thing we've talked about too is we're just one piece of the total tax bill. We don't know what our peers are going to do at the county and the schools. If they happen to maybe drop, they don't have the projects we coming. The overall result in this may not be as severe as people may think it may be. We've seen that before, where we've went down, they've went up. The net really didn't move the total tax bill. And that's our hope is that, that kind of occurs as well, as there's not a lot of other stuff happening, large projects. I don't know of any other large municipalities that may help offset some of this too. It just seems to kind of work out that way.
I think you have to look at the long-range benefits of doing these projects for the city, to encourage growth, to encourage a vibrant community, and
Stop talking about them.
just do them.
do them.
Get it done.
Just do
That'd be
them.
nice. Get her done. Okay.
All right.
I'll make sure staff has that programmed in. We'll get bond attorneys tomorrow, and that's what we'll move forward with.
Thank you again for your diligence and
No, thank you, council. This is not
Everything.
easy, and I realize that. It's just unfortunately where we are.
you make it easier for us to understand and appreciate.
James, if I could just make a suggestion, I had somebody who was trying to watch on TV saying how small this is to look at. Maybe when we talk about it at the next meeting, if you could do a enlarged photo of the, just the pertinent sections of the chart for people.
Cut out what we're focusing on the others. We'll
So
chop it
that
up
people could
and
see it or have it attached to the documents
make
next
it
time,
work.
so people
Yep,
can
we
see it.
can do that.
All right. Agenda item I, reports from boards and commissions. Historic Preservation Commission minutes from October 28th of 2019, and monthly financials for January 2020 received into record. Staff updates.
Real quick, it's getting late. Snowplows are out right now because they want to get as much pushed off to the side before it gets really cold and windy tomorrow.
Thank you.
Anything else, staff? I don't think we have anything else, sir.
Okay, thank you. City council comments. I'm just going to start with Brian and work our way around.
So last week, on this Monday, Girl Scout cookies arrived in town. I wanted to thank the good people at the center who made their space available for sorting cookies. Waverly was in charge of the cookies for this part of Braemar County, so all of the cookies for Waverly, Janesville, Denver, and Shell Rock came through Waverly to be sorted up and divvied up to the various troops. They had about 1,400 boxes or cases, which comes out to about 15,000 boxes of cookies that had to be sorted and divvied up. And I really wanted to thank the people at the center who made that space available, because it would be horrible trying to sort those cookies outside. So it was a nice protected space where they could sort the cookies for the various troops. So I wanted to thank them, and I wanted to let people know that it's Girl Scout cookie season in town. So if you need to find yourself, get your fix, you can hunt down a Girl Scout. I have one living in my house.
Might rephrase that a little bit. That's
Although I have to be honest, she's not living in my basement. I do have to say, I think my wife has sold more Girl Scout cookies than my daughter has. So I will not be at the bar after the city council meeting because we have an executive session, so you'll just have to wait another week for that.
Heather.
I just want to thank all the city staff and all the committees that really work hard to come up with solutions and ideas for projects. And James, I really want to thank you for educating us about what's going on and answering our questions. It's really important to the citizens to really know what's going on and understand it on a they really, I understand it on a different level than, administration does here. So I just want to thank you guys for all your information and education.
Just want to say they should eat your Girl Scout cookies in moderation, or we'll lose our Walmart Healthy Community designation. But go out and buy those cookies. Wanted to give a shout out again to our tree experts who were here tonight. They're trying to revive the chapter of Trees Forever here in Waverly. So if you are a fan of trees, Trees Forever is now going to be meeting the second Thursday of the month over the lunch hour here at the Civic Center. And they are planning a workshop, an open house, March 14th at 10 a.m. here at the Civic Center. If you want to learn about trees, how to prune your trees, what makes a good shade tree, etc. And if you're interested, you can email me at the city or Paul Chevelle, and they'll hook you up with more information.
Tim?
I'm good for this week.
Chris?
I just wanted to remind the public that you can reach me with comments, questions, concerns, or ideas at my city email, or call me on my home number at 483-5252.
I'm good. You're good. I'm good as well. I didn't have anything further than that. Josh?
I don't have anything to add this week. Oh, actually, I do. So on Friday, sorry. I don't have a problem with people hearing me. On Friday, we were supposed to have signed the papers for the fair to buy the grounds, and I'm assuming that happened because I didn't hear otherwise.
The deed got recorded.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, so the Braemar County Fair is landowners once again.
Wow.
Awesome. Good job.
Good job. All right. Moving on to item M, executive session to discuss collective bargaining strategy for upcoming city unit and public safety unit negotiations as provided by section 20.17 subsection 3 of the Code of Iowa. Seek a motion to move into executive session.
I move that we move into executive session to discuss collective bargaining strategy for upcoming city unit and public safety unit negotiations as provided by section 20.17 subsection 3 of the Code of Iowa.
Second.
Motion second. Roll call vote. Carla.
Birgen.
Yes.
Beaufore.
Yes.
Rathe.
Yes.
Drenkow.
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Glaser.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes.
7-0, motion is approved.
No.